At 34, Ryan Miller never would have guessed that his reunion with his old high school crush, after all these years, would end so abruptly. The first second he saw her, he was promptly obliterated by a semi-truck. It was a night of torrential rain. Two enormous, bone-white headlights suddenly tore through the darkness, piercing the downpour as the truck roared toward them. It was about to slam into the elegant woman holding an umbrella on the crosswalk ahead. Standing just a few feet behind her, Ryan reacted on pure instinct. He sprinted forward, and just before the truck hit, he shoved her out of the way with every ounce of strength he had. In that instant, the world seemed to fall silent. Time slowed to a crawl, the scene unfolding like a slow-motion film. The relentless rain appeared to freeze midair. The woman, startled, stumbled to the side of the road and whipped her head around. Through the curtain of rain, her eyes met Ryan's. He saw her face clearly. Under a cascade of smooth, dark hair was a visage so exquisitely beautiful it took his breath away, mature, coolly elegant, and yet radiantly stunning. Her lips were parted in shock, and then, as realization dawned, her expression shifted to one of horror. She opened her mouth to scream, and in that same moment, Ryan recognized her. Ava Sinclair, the undisputed queen of Northwood High back in the day. Now a billionaire tycoon, the legendary ice queen of the state's business world. And, once upon a time, the girl who sat next to him in class. Fate, you've got a twisted sense of humor. It was the last thought that crossed his mind. Then came the screech of tires, the desperate groan of rubber against asphalt, and the frantic, horrified scream of that familiar, yet unfamiliar, woman. And oh, a tidal wave of agony crashed over him, and Ryan's world went black. His consciousness seemed to drift, wandering through the darkness for an eternity. Then, faintly, a figure appeared, desperately reaching for him, stretching out a hand. He instinctively reached back. The moment their hands touched, the darkness shattered. Ryan's eyes flew open. He glanced around, bewildered. He was in a classroom, bright and clean. Through the open windows, he could hear the drone of cicadas and the chirping of birds. The ceiling fan overhead creaked as it labored to circulate the hot summer air. At the front of the room, his homeroom teacher's monotone lecture was the perfect lullaby, making it impossible not to feel drowsy. Everything was so familiar, so real it felt unreal. A flood of memories washed over him, and Ryan finally understood the incredible miracle that had just occurred. It was the early summer of 2007. He was a senior at Northwood High. The clock had been turned back 16 years. He'd been reborn. It must have been his last-ditch act of heroism. Maybe he'd impressed whatever cosmic force was in charge. A wave of emotion washed over him. Nostalgia and gratitude, but mostly exhilarating joy. A second chance. He could fix so many of his past regrets, build a better life. Come to think of it, he probably owed a thank you to his old desk mate, the gorgeous ice queen who'd gotten him killed the moment they reunited. Right? His desk mate. The thought finally registered. Ryan turned his head to look at the seat beside him. He was in the back row of the fourth group, by the window. Slumped over the desk next to him was a teenage girl. Her face was hidden as she slept, her head pillowed on her arms. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, clean ponytail. She wore the standard Northwood High uniform, a thin, red and white track jacket that revealed the slender, pale nape of her neck. The matching track pants were supposed to be baggy and unflattering, but on her, they were stretched taut over long, perfectly curved legs, creating a silhouette that could make any teenage boy's heart pound and his mouth go dry. As a man with the mind of a 34-year-old, Ryan had seen enough of the world not to be reduced to such a pathetic state. So he calmly wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth. He took another look at those long legs, and then he coolly swallowed. Even at 18, his desk mate was already exceptionally well-developed. In his first life, he'd never had the chance to study her this closely. Even though they'd sat together for years, he'd been a shy, awkward kid with average grades. He was far too intimidated by the girl they called the Ice Queen of Northwood to even attempt a conversation. In 3 years, they'd probably exchanged fewer than 10 sentences. He'd never even had the courage to sneak more than a quick glance at her. Who would have thought that over a decade after graduation, their first reunion would involve him saving her life? Looking at her now, Ryan felt a sense of closure. He'd lost his life, but he'd gained a new one. He figured that made them even. He wasn't about to get any ideas he hadn't dared to have in his first life. After all, the school's legendary Ice Queen wasn't someone you could just ask out. For 3 years, countless guys had crashed and burned trying to melt that glacier. What made him think a reborn version of himself would suddenly make her warm up to him? Unless, of course, She remembered he'd saved her life, but she hadn't been reborn. Ryan shrugged, ready to push the ridiculous thoughts away. "Ryan Miller, are you daydreaming in my class?" A roar from the front of the room. Mr. Harris, the homeroom teacher, was glaring at him. The entire class turned to stare, their faces filled with schadenfreude. Ryan froze, unsure how to apologize, but the shouts seemed to have woken the girl beside him. She pushed herself up, rubbing her sleepy eyes, and slowly lifted her head. And for the first time, Ryan saw the face of his 18-year-old deskmate. Delicate features, a perfectly sculpted nose. She lacked the stunning, cold glamour she would have in her 30s, but she possessed a fresh, natural beauty that was even more captivating. As Ryan stared at her, she instinctively looked up at him. Time and space seemed to shift, and their gazes met once again. From Ryan's perspective, he saw something completely unexpected. His ice queen desk-mate froze. Her cherry-like lips fell slightly open, as if she'd just witnessed something utterly unbelievable. Then before his eyes, her own began to turn red. A glistening sheen of tears quickly welled up, filling her eyes to the brim. Before Ryan could react, and before Mr. Harris could process what was happening, the entire class watched in stunned, horrified silence as a fragrant breeze washed over him. The untouchable ice queen of Northwood High, the most popular girl in school, threw her arms open, lunged forward, and wrapped him in a tight, desperate hug. For a moment, there was dead silence. The next second, as the classroom erupted into a chaotic uproar, the beautiful girl, clinging to him, choked out a single, sob-filled sentence that was lost in the noise. "I found you." Ava Sinclair had a dream. In the dream, she was 34 years old, a billionaire CEO with a wildly successful career. She'd been single for years, but that only allowed her to pour all her energy into her work, and she loved it. Until that rainy night, when the two massive headlights of an overloaded semi-truck sliced through the darkness and rain, she had frozen, too slow to react. In that moment, she had resigned herself to her fate, a sense of despair washing over her. Then, out of nowhere, a figure lunged, pushing her forward with all his might. In her dazed state, she turned her head. For the first and last time, she saw his face. He was a man about her age, with tousled black hair and a handsome, kind face that radiated a strange sense of warmth and familiarity. At the funeral, he was posthumously awarded a medal for his bravery. His parents, who had rushed from their hometown overnight, clung to the casket, their grief so overwhelming they could barely stand. Ava canceled all her business meetings and appointments. Dressed in black, consumed by a crushing weight of guilt and sorrow, she took it upon herself to manage all the funeral arrangements, handling every detail with meticulous care. After the service, she took his parents back to their hotel. There, she knelt before them and bowed her head to the floor 3 times. She solemnly swore that from that day on, she would take on the responsibility of caring for them in their son's place. She would be their daughter, their dutiful daughter-in-law. His parents took his ashes back to their hometown. When Ava accompanied them, she was stunned to discover that he was from her hometown, too. Northwood. Not only that, but the name she had learned on the day of the accident, Ryan Miller, felt uncannily familiar. It was as if she'd known him before. At his family's house, she ignored his parents' protests and insisted on taking care of them, cleaning and cooking, slipping effortlessly into the role of a daughter. After cleaning the living room and the master bedroom, she came to Ryan's room. It was the first time in her life Ava Sinclair had ever stepped into a man's bedroom alone. His parents told her he hadn't lived at home since graduating high school, so the room was a time capsule of his life before the age of 18. Standing there, she looked around. Every video game disc, every magazine poster, every award certificate on the wall seemed to hold a shadow of the boy he once was. Then she noticed a photograph tucked under the glass of his desk. Northwood High School, class of 2007, senior homeroom 10 graduation photo. The gold lettering hit her like a sledgehammer. Her head spun, a buzzing sound filling her ears. Frantically, she scanned the photo and found him. An 18-year-old version of herself, her expression cool and proud, the undeniable star of the picture. And there, in the most inconspicuous corner of the crowd, stood a quiet, shy boy with his head slightly bowed. It all came rushing back. The sealed-off memories of the past unspooled like an old film reel. So that was Ryan Miller. The familiarity wasn't a coincidence. She had actually known him. It wasn't a stranger's heroic act. It was a reunion with her high school desk mate after more than a decade. A reunion that had ended with him sacrificing his life before they could even say hello. Staring at the photo, she began to cry. Her memories of him were faint and blurry. She couldn't recall a single real conversation they'd ever had. And now, she owed him a debt she could never repay. But she also had a lifetime to slowly get to know him. Ryan had kept journals his whole life. Stacks of them filled a shelf in his bookcase. After a long hesitation, and with his parents' permission, she began to read. The entries were detailed and mundane, covering everything from what he ate each day to his deepest thoughts and feelings throughout his school years. She started from the very first one, often finding herself smiling at his funny anecdotes or feeling a pang of empathy for his moments of sadness. Gradually, she discovered a side of him she'd never known. He was honest, brave, and kind, possessing so many qualities she admired. She became completely engrossed in the journals, experiencing his joys and sorrows as if they were her own. It felt as if their souls were forging an unprecedented connection. True soulmates. When she got to his high school years, she was surprised to find entries about herself. Her shy, quiet desk mate had secretly had a crush on her, but he'd never had the confidence to act on it. "You coward. If I could do it all over again, I would be the one to chase you." That night, lying in Ryan's bed, she couldn't help but smile at the thought. As she drifted off to sleep, she entered a world of darkness. In the endless void, she saw a figure floating in the distance. Ryan. Suddenly, she was overwhelmed by a heart-wrenching pain, a mountain of guilt and regret crashing down on her. She reached out desperately, stretching her arm as far as it would go. He was so close, yet always just out of reach. She was on the verge of tears, her chest filled with a potent mix of frustration and remorse. She refused to give up, straining, reaching, stretching farther and farther. Just a little more. A little more. Finally, with gritted teeth and unwavering determination, her outstretched hand touched his. As if discovering a priceless treasure, she summoned her last ounce of strength, lunged forward, and grasped his hand tightly, their fingers intertwining. The darkness shattered. Light slowly filled her vision. In the distance, she heard the familiar angry shout of her old high school homeroom teacher. At a desk in the back row, Ava Sinclair pushed herself up, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She was stunned to find herself in a bright, clean classroom. The air was hot and humid. Everything around her felt both strange and familiar. She looked up and met the eyes of the boy sitting next to her. He had a handsome, gentle face, his fluffy, dark hair looking soft enough to run her fingers through. She recognized him instantly. In that moment, her eyes turned red. A torrent of emotions, excitement, joy, heartache, and overwhelming relief surged through her. Ignoring everyone else in the room, she threw her arms open, lunged forward, and hugged him tightly. Amid the deafening roar of the classroom, Ava choked out, her voice thick with tears, "I found you." A fragrant scent filled his nostrils. A soft body was pressed against his. The classroom had erupted in chaos, and Ryan hadn't heard what his beautiful desk mate had sobbed into his shoulder. Right now, he was completely and utterly bewildered. A giant question mark seemed to float above his head. WEF? What is going on? It was too much information. Ryan's brain was short-circuiting. 1 second, he was a 34-year-old who had just been flattened by a semi-truck while playing the hero. The next, he was reborn, thrown back 16 years into his high school classroom. Before he could even process that shocking turn of events, his desk mate, the school's ice queen, was crying and hugging him, muttering something he couldn't understand. What kind of plot twist was this? His head was spinning. A suspicious thought popped into his mind. Is this a setup? Before Ryan could figure anything out, the homeroom teacher at the front of the room, Mr. Harris, a man nearing 50, was practically incandescent with rage. "Ryan Miller, I can tolerate you sleeping in my class," he roared. "But harassing your desk mate? Pretty female students always got preferential treatment from male teachers, and Ava Sinclair, academically gifted and universally acknowledged as Northwood High's queen, was Mr. Harris's star pupil. The rest of the class was furious, too. Their glares shot toward him like daggers. "You bastard. You look like such a nice guy, Ryan, but you dare to force yourself on our queen, Ava? Who do you think you are? If anyone's going to do that, it should be me." Huh. Ryan snapped back to reality and frantically pushed the girl in his arms away. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding." Mr. Harris's face grew even redder. "A misunderstanding? Then explain to me why you were forcing a hug on Miss Sinclair." "Are you kidding me?" Ryan's jaw dropped. "Sir, you need to get your eyes checked. I'm the victim here. She's the one who jumped me. Look at that triumphant smirk on her face now that she's gotten her way. Look, she's so happy she's crying tears of joy." Wait, the more he thought about it, the less sense that made. Mr. Harris finally noticed his prize student's tear-streaked face and red-rimmed eyes. His voice trembled with rage. You made Miss Sinclair cry. Ryan suddenly felt like crying, too. I really didn't. The classroom erupted in a chorus of angry accusations. The teacher's gaze was now fixed on him, as if he were a death row inmate. He raised his hand, ready to deliver the final verdict and sentence Ryan to social execution to appease the masses. Just as the chaos reached its peak, Ava, having recovered from the initial shock of seeing Ryan again, finally pieced together what was happening. She was reborn, back in the summer of her 18th year, in her senior year classroom. The man who would die 16 years later to save her was now just a teenage boy sitting next to her. Except, it seemed she had just gotten him into a lot of trouble. That's enough, Miller. Get out. Go stand in the hallway for half an hour. Mr. Harris had reached his limit and was roaring out his judgment. Wait. Having assessed the situation, Ava collected herself and stood up. At the back of the room, the girl stood tall and poised. Though her eyes were still slightly red, her expression had returned to its usual cool, calm composure. She looked at the teacher on the podium. Sir, you've misunderstood, she said, her tone light. What just happened had nothing to do with Ryan. I was the one who hugged him. The classroom fell silent. Then an even louder wave of gasps and murmurs swept through the room. The students' eyes nearly popped out of their heads. What? Ava hugged Ryan? No way. Mr. Harris couldn't believe it either. You hugged him? Miss Sinclair, you don't have to cover for him. Just tell the truth, and I'll make sure justice is served. Ava's expression remained placid. I'm not covering for him. I just had a nightmare and it scared me. She added, it wasn't Ryan's fault. A nightmare? Ah, that explains it. A collective wave of understanding washed over the class. Of course, Ryan wouldn't have the guts. Ava must have woken up in a panic and just grabbed the first thing she could find. Instantly, their anger toward Ryan morphed into envy and jealousy. Damn, that lucky bastard. Why couldn't I be your desk mate? Then I'd be the one getting hugged by the Ice Queen. Oh, is that so? Mr. Harris's expression softened slightly. Please have a seat. He then turned back to Ryan, his face instantly hardening again, his tone becoming severe as if addressing an enemy of the state. And you, Miller, I'll let it slide this time. Pay attention in class, and don't let me catch you bullying Miss Sinclair again. Ryan just stood there, speechless. Okay, the difference in how people were treated was just staggering. The storm passed. The classroom settled back into a fragile peace, and the teacher's mind-numbingly dull lecture resumed. In the back row, Ryan let out a sigh of relief. That was a close one. He had no idea that, at that very moment, his desk mate had turned slightly, propped her chin on her hand, and was watching him with rapt attention. In her first life, she had only caught a fleeting glimpse of him before the accident. Now, reborn, this was the first time she could truly study her future savior, her former desk mate, up close. He didn't look much different from his older self, still handsome, but with the added touch of youthful innocence that was appropriate for his age. His dark hair was a bit messy, his bangs a little too long. In another decade, he'd be exactly the type of boy-next-door heartthrob that older women would swoon over. Even now, in 2007, if he weren't so shy and withdrawn, always keeping his head down, he would have easily been the object of many secret crushes. Ava felt a pang of regret for not noticing him back then. But it didn't matter. Now that she was reborn, she had all the time in the world to get to know him better. A small smile played on her lips at the thought. Suddenly, Ryan felt a chill run down his spine, as if he were being watched by a cunning fox. He turned his head. His beautiful desk mate was resting her chin on her hand, staring at him without blinking. A question mark appeared over his head. What are you looking at? He blurted out. His voice wasn't loud, but the teacher's sharp ears caught it instantly. Mr. Harris's glare shot to the back of the room like a bolt of lightning. Miller, what are you doing now? The next second, a classmate who had been jealously watching them eagerly raised his hand. Mr. Harris, I know, he announced. Ryan was just staring at Ava. What? Ryan's world tilted again. Are you kidding me? This is the second time today. It took every ounce of Ryan's strength, short of swearing on a stack of Bibles, to half convince a skeptical Mr. Harris that he had absolutely no intention of harassing his star pupil. The teacher grudgingly spared him once more. Ryan breathed a sigh of relief. Then, gritting his teeth, he shot a sideways glance at the real culprit. But his Ice Queen desk mate had already turned away, looking as if nothing had happened. Her face was a mask of cool concentration, directed at the teacher at the front of the room, as if she were genuinely engrossed in the lesson. The act was so convincing that Ryan started to doubt himself. Maybe he had imagined it. It seemed plausible. After all, his desk mate was the school's legendary ice queen. This aloof, unapproachable demeanor was the version of her he knew. Her, propping her chin on her hand and staring at him. Ryan didn't think he was that charming. It had to be a hallucination. The shock of being reborn was still messing with his head. He needed to give it time. Muttering to himself, Ryan turned his attention back to the front, forcing himself to listen to Mr. Harris's sleep-inducing lecture to avoid another near-death experience. He didn't know that as soon as he looked away, his desk mate, while appearing to stare straight ahead, had the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. Of course I'm pretending to listen. Teasing my little savior is way more fun. But clever as she was, Ava also knew she had to be careful. In the eyes of the entire school, she was the proud, unapproachable ice queen. If she suddenly became overly friendly with Ryan, it wouldn't just raise questions. It would probably scare her adorable savior away, and that would defeat the purpose. They were desk mates, after all. There would be plenty of time. The prize was already in her grasp. There was no need to rush. She would savor it. Bite by bite. At the thought, another smile graced her lips, and she unconsciously licked them. The fleeting gesture was so alluring, so bewitching, that for a split second she looked like a 1,000-year-old fox spirit in human form. In the next row over, a boy who had been sneaking glances at her saw that momentary flash of enchantment. He was so mesmerized he nearly fell out of his chair. The commotion drew the attention of other students and a sharp rebuke from Mr. Harris. As for the cause of it all, our Queen Ava had already returned to her cool, untouchable facade, as if nothing had happened. But that cold demeanor didn't last long. Soon, she couldn't resist sneaking another peek at Ryan. It was a bit like being a fan of a celebrity. Before her rebirth, she had devoured every one of his journals, studied every award and photo in his room. She knew him almost as well as his own parents did. And now, the man who would one day save her, still a boy with a hint of innocence, was sitting right beside her, within arm's reach. She could study him up close, connecting the face in front of her with the thoughts and stories she'd read in his journals. It gave her a strange sense of satisfaction. And the more she looked, the more she liked what she saw. On the surface, Ava remained as cool as ever. But inside, a tiny version of herself was practically squealing, hearts popping in her eyes. He's so cute. Aya, his hair looks so soft and fluffy, I want to mess it up. His skin looks so smooth, I want to pinch his cheeks. A shy little puppy dog. I want to tease him. Reborn with the mind of a woman in her 30s, a powerful and aloof CEO admired and feared by countless people, she had been single for years. Who would have thought she could turn into such a fangirl? Even Ava herself was surprised. But at that moment, she was thoroughly enjoying it. Taking advantage of a moment when the teacher wasn't looking, she continued to stare at the boy beside her. Ryan couldn't take it anymore. He'd been feeling that chill again, the sensation of being watched by a fox. Even without turning his head, he could feel a pair of beautiful eyes shamelessly fixed on him. But every time he turned to look, his desk mate would whip her head back with astonishing speed, returning to her prim, proper, and cool posture. The moment he looked away, he could feel her gaze sneak back onto him. He'd turn again, and she'd be sitting there, perfectly still, looking like a statue of the ideal student. Flawless. Unbeatable. After this cycle repeated several times, Ryan's lips started to twitch. He scribbled a note and pushed it across the desk. Seriously, what do you want? The cool ice queen merely glanced at the note, her expression unchanged. A moment later, she pushed it back. On the other side, she had written, "Don't pass notes in class." Her handwriting was strong and sharp, radiating the same unapproachable aura she did. Ryan just stared. I give up. She's on another level. Little did he know that while Ava appeared composed on the outside, the tiny version of herself inside was screaming and rolling on the floor with glee. Aya, what do I do? My heart is melting. He called me seriously. One class period with the beautiful queen being next to him felt like an eternity. When the bell finally rang, Ryan shot up as if launched by a spring and bolted out the back door of the classroom. Out in the hallway, he let out a sigh of relief. Finally, some fresh air. Time to clear his head. That was so weird. His desk mate had been sneaking glances at him all class. If he didn't know she was the cold and aloof ice queen, he'd almost think she was flirting with him. Just then, a classmate sidled up to him, a grin on his face and a thumb in the air. Dude, Ryan, nice. You actually got to hug Queen Ava. You're a legend. The guy's name was Leo Collins, Ryan's closest thing to a best friend in high school. He was loud, outgoing, and loved to gossip. Ryan sighed. It really wasn't like that. She started it. Leo gave him a knowing look. I get it, man. She's the queen bee of Northwood. Guys are lining up for her. It's normal to feel like you're not worthy. His tone shifted, becoming conspiratorial. But you're her desk mate, dude. That's a huge advantage. You know, the early bird gets the worm. If you actually manage to win her over, you be a god. He clapped Ryan on the shoulder. And hey, even if you don't, it's not embarrassing to try. It's better than being Samantha Banks's little simp, right? Samantha? Ryan paused, the name jogging a memory. Right. He did have a rather dark, romantic history in high school. Speak of the devil. Just then a familiar, delicate voice called out from behind him. Ryan. Ryan turned to see a pretty girl in the school's summer uniform, a polo shirt and a knee-length skirt, walking cheerfully toward him, another girl in tow. The first girl had a sweet, lovely face and neatly styled shoulder-length hair, adorned with a small pink bow. While she couldn't compare to the stunning beauty of his desk mate, Ava Sinclair, she was at least on the level of a class beauty. Her cute, sweet look was incredibly popular with high school boys. No wonder she had me wrapped around her little finger in my first life. Ryan sighed internally as the girl approached. This was the Samantha Banks Leo had just mentioned, the architect of his high school romantic disasters. In his past life, he hadn't made a move on the beautiful queen bee sitting next to him, partly because he was too shy and intimidated by Ava, but also because his heart had already been claimed by Samantha Bank from Homeroom 7. It had all started with her. She thought Ryan was cute and made the first move. With a combination of flirtatious compliments and feigned helplessness, she had completely captivated the inexperienced Ryan, who had quickly fallen head over heels for her. He didn't know then that beneath her sweet exterior, Samantha was a master manipulator. Once she had him hooked, she expertly trained him to be her loyal errand boy. A simple beckoning of her finger was enough to make him do anything for her, willingly. The poor, naive Ryan of the past had thought he was making sacrifices for love. He spent most of his $20 weekly allowance on her, surviving on cheap ramen and vending machine snacks without a single complaint. And after all that, the furthest they had ever gone was holding hands, twice, and only when she allowed it. Whenever he tried to confess his feelings and make things official, she would deftly change the subject, always keeping him on the hook without committing. Aren't things great between us right now? Why do we need a label like boyfriend and girlfriend? But don't give up. I really like how much you like me. Tell you what, my birthday's coming up. If you give me 10 presents and I like them, maybe I'll seriously consider it. In the end, after graduation, Ryan had painstakingly spent 2 weeks folding a basket full of paper cranes, bottling a jar of baby's breath, and saving up $50 to buy her a genuine Mickey Mouse plushie. 10 gifts in total. Filled with joy, he went to her house on her birthday, braving a downpour to deliver them. But downstairs, he saw her locked in a passionate kiss with a rich kid from school, whose hands were already creeping up under her shirt. Snap! The sound of a pure-hearted romantic's heartbreaking. The past was painful, but now that he was reborn, Ryan had no intention of being anyone's simp again. At that moment, Samantha, walking with her best friend Becca, had no idea that one of the fish in her pond had already escaped. She stopped in front of Ryan, a cheerful smile on her face. Ryan, Becca, and I want some ice cream. Can you go to the store and get some for us? Her tone was completely matter-of-fact. Becca chimed in impatiently. Hurry up, the break's almost over. You only have 7 minutes left. Before Ryan could speak, his friend Leo shot back, annoyed. You know there are only 7 minutes left? The store is all the way across campus. There's no way he can make it back in time. The short breaks at Northwood High were only 10 minutes. A round trip to the campus store would take at least 8 or 9 minutes, even at a full sprint. It was exhausting. Students usually waited for the longer 20-minute breaks to buy snacks. Samantha and Becca were just craving something sweet and didn't want to wait or go themselves. So they turned to their reliable errand boy, Ryan, who would not only save them the effort but also pay for it. Hearing Leo's objection, Samantha pouted cutely. You might not be able to do it, she said, but that doesn't mean my Ryan can't. She then turned to him. Right, Ryan? Listen to that. My Ryan. It was those little hints of intimacy that had kept him hooked. Classic. So classic. In his past life, Ryan would have been overjoyed and would have sprinted off immediately. But the current Ryan saw right through her games. Even her cute pout only filled him with disdain. Still, being a mature man in his 30s, he wasn't about to get into a fight with a teenage girl. He decided to refuse politely. Are you feeling okay? He asked. Huh. Samantha and Becca stared at him, stunned, as if they had misheard. Ryan added, If you're not sick, why don't you just go get it yourselves? Samantha quickly composed herself, putting on a pitiful expression. But I can't run that fast. Becca jumped to her defense. Exactly. Samantha's a girl. The store is so far away. How could you make her run all that way? Ryan instinctively glanced down at Samantha's legs. Below her knee-length uniform skirt, a pair of fair, well-proportioned calves were visible, clad in red canvas sneakers and white ankle socks. Ryan nodded. Nice legs. A flicker of triumph crossed Samantha's face. She thought he was finally caving. She shyly tucked one leg behind the other, a pose that actually accentuated them even more. So, you'll go. But his next words were delivered with a straight face. With legs like that, you must be a fast runner. He gave her an encouraging nod. Believe in yourself. You can do it. Huh. Samantha was baffled. What kind of plot twist was this? Was he complimenting her legs like a track coach? Becca was getting agitated. Ryan, can you stop messing around? Are you going or not? There are only 5 minutes left. Samantha bit her lip, as if making a momentous decision. Fine. If you go buy us ice cream, I'll let you. She declared, eat lunch with me today. A victorious smirk spread across her face. This was her trump card. Whenever she offered to eat a meal with him, he would become ecstatic and agree to anything. This time would be no different. But to her shock, he just looked at her as if she were a scam artist. Wait, he said, his face a picture of disbelief. You want me to buy you lunch too? Samantha was stunned. The unexpected turn of events left her head spinning. She was gracing him with her presence, offering to eat with him. And he seemed unhappy about it. This was not the reaction she had anticipated at all. By now, other students in the hallway had noticed the commotion and were watching with curiosity. Samantha often came up to their floor to find Ryan, usually to ask him to run errands. It was a common sight. But today, something was different. Ryan hadn't immediately agreed and run off like her loyal servant. The situation was getting awkward. With so many people watching, Samantha felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She was, after all, the belle of homeroom 7, with plenty of admirers. A single word from her usually had boys tripping over themselves to do her bidding. In her mind, giving Ryan the opportunity to run an errand for her was a privilege. But now, her supposedly reliable tool seemed to have developed a backbone. He was suddenly disobedient. Annoyed, Samantha stomped her foot. Are you going to go or not? If you don't, I'll. She trailed off, wanting to threaten him, but realizing she had nothing to threaten him with. Since they'd met, it had always been Ryan giving and her taking. She had offered nothing in return besides the occasional flirtatious word or cute gesture. She couldn't exactly threaten him by saying, I'll stop being cute at you, and dropping hints. Seeing her at a loss for words, Leo chimed in happily. You'll what? Can't think of anything, can you? It's always been Ryan doing everything for you, and you've given him nothing. What right do you have to threaten him? The truth stung. Samantha's face turned red with a mix of shame and anger. In a moment of desperation, an idea flashed in her mind. I know, she blurted out. If you don't go, the offer to consider holding your hand is off the table. You'll never get the chance. Having said her piece, a wave of relief washed over Samantha. She looked at Ryan, her confidence restored. She and Ryan had never had any physical contact. He had once nervously asked if he could hold her hand, but she had brushed him off, saying she'd think about it. Her plan had been to dangle the prospect of holding her hand to get more out of him, and then, one day, when she was in a good mood, she might graciously grant him the favor. It worked perfectly. Just the vague promise had been enough to make him treat her like a queen for months, terrified of doing anything to upset her and ruin his chances. Now, playing her trump card, she was sure Ryan would fall back in line. Ryan did pause for a moment. He remembered. In the 3 years she'd strung him along, he had only held her hand twice, and that was right before graduation. According to what she just said, their first hand-holding hadn't even happened yet, which meant, my body is still pure. An unexpected wave of joy washed over him. He looked at Samantha and said with genuine gratitude, Thank you. Thank you for not defiling me. I can never repay you for this kindness. I've been given a second chance at life. The first time I hold a girl's hand is a big deal. I can't let it be with a manipulative user. Thank God. It's not too late. Samantha was confused by his gratitude, but she quickly took it as a sign of his surrender and became even more arrogant. Scared now? Then hurry up. I want a Magnum bar. If you're late, you can forget about ever holding my hand. Ryan's face lit up. You can count on it. I'm definitely not going. The air suddenly went still. Samantha was stunned. When she finally processed his words, she was furious. Did you not understand me? If you don't go, I won't hold your hand. Ryan nodded eagerly. It's a deal. You can't go back on your word, right? For my entire life? He added, just to be sure. Becca was fuming. Ryan, are you deaf? Samantha is saying that if you don't buy her ice cream, You'll never get to hold her hand, she yelled. Her voice was a little too loud, drawing the attention of everyone in the hallway. Seeing Ryan standing there with a furious Samantha and Becca, the onlookers felt a twinge of pity for him. Poor guy. Must have done something to upset his goddess again. Now he's getting chewed out in public. Just then, a cool, melodic voice cut through the air. Of course he understands. The real question is, do you two understand plain English? It was like a goddess descending from the heavens. The undisputed Ice Queen of Northwood High, her expression as frosty as her reputation, strode out of the homeroom 10 classroom. Each step she took seemed to land on the heart of every spectator. Her ponytail swung behind her, elegant and commanding. She walked straight up to Samantha and Becca and, whether intentionally or not, positioned herself in front of Ryan, shielding him like a mother hen protecting her chick. Ava looked down at Samantha. At nearly 5'7", she towered over the other girl. Ryan said he's not interested, she said, her voice dripping with ice. Aren't you embarrassed to keep pestering him? Her words sent a shockwave through the hallway. Every onlooker's eyes widened in disbelief. Holy crap, is Queen Ava defending Ryan? Standing up for him? Amid the stunned murmurs, Ava's expression remained unchanged as she continued to look down at the shorter, sweeter-looking girl. Samantha Banks, from Homeroom 7. Having read all of Ryan's journals in her past life, Ava recognized her instantly. She knew exactly how much emotional damage this seemingly innocent girl had caused him. Just thinking about the sad entries in his diary was enough to make her see red. It wasn't just a sense of justice. It was the anger of someone seeing their prized possession being messed with. At that moment, though her face was a mask of icy calm, the tiny version of Ava inside was clad in full armor, brandishing a sword and breathing fire. The man I've claimed as mine is not someone you get to touch. The plot had taken another sharp, unexpected turn. Staring at the back of his desk mate, who had just swooped in to defend him, Ryan felt a large question mark materialize over his head again. Question mark. What was happening now? As the school's legendary Ice Queen, Ava Sinclair had always maintained a cool, detached distance from everyone, in class and around school. She had few friends and never got involved in student drama. So why was she suddenly confronting Samantha Banks? Ryan's 30-something brain kicked into high gear, analyzing the situation. First, he ruled out the possibility that she was doing it for him, a nobody. Therefore, he looked at Ava again, a glint of understanding in his eyes. They're rivals. Samantha and Becca were caught completely off guard. They were flustered, especially in the face of the taller, more beautiful, and far more popular school queen. Samantha, the belle of her own class, was clearly outmatched in every way. She took an involuntary step back, her confidence wavering. She exchanged a panicked look with her friend. We don't have a problem with Ava Sinclair, do we? Why is she suddenly coming after us? Despite her fear, with so many people watching, Samantha couldn't afford to lose face. She forced herself to meet Ava's gaze. Ava Sinclair, we're talking to Ryan. What does this have to do with you? Becca summoned her courage and added, yeah, what's your relationship with Ryan, anyway? We're talking to him, so why are you sticking your nose in his business? Her voice trailed off under Ava's icy stare. My relationship with Ryan? He saved my life, and I knelt before his parents and called them Mom and Dad. What do you think our relationship is? The tiny Ava inside was fuming, but on the outside, she remained perfectly calm. I'm his desk mate, she said simply. The boys in the hallway who had been eavesdropping let out a collective sigh of relief. Oh good, just his desk mate. Samantha and Becca also relaxed. Becca scoffed, oh, just his desk mate. I thought it was something serious. Ava's expression didn't change, but her eyes, now fixed on a slightly smug Samantha, glinted with mockery. And you? What's your relationship with Ryan? Samantha started to answer, but then she realized she had nothing to say. She and Ryan had no official title. The question left her speechless. Thinking fast, she blurted out, Ryan and I, we're good friends. Becca immediately jumped in. That's right. And we're the kind of good friends who might hold hands, she added, shooting a triumphant look at Ava. But Ava only looked more amused. Really? The kind of good friend who has to run your errands just for the chance to hold your hand. Samantha's face turned bright red. Becca rushed to her defense. Ryan does it because he wants to. Samantha never forced him. Ava ignored them and turned to Ryan. Her tone was calm, almost instructive. You need to be more careful about who you hang out with. Don't waste your time on people who just want to use you. She paused, then added casually, and another thing. If you really want to hold a girl's hand, hold mine. It's free. Her words were a bombshell. Everyone in the hallway, Samantha, Becca, Leo, and all the other students, was stunned into silence, their minds reeling. And then, the next thing they saw sent them into a state of shock. It was the early summer of 2007, and the day was bright. Sunlight filtered through the leaves of the tall trees in front of Northwood High, dappling the hallway floor with golden light. Dust motes danced in the air like tiny fairies. In front of everyone, the beautiful and cool school queen held out her hand, a pale, slender arm extending toward the boy in front of her. She placed her hand in his, a princess offering an invitation to her loyal knight. Then, she laced her fingers through his and held on tight. And with that one audacious act, she seared the image into the minds of everyone present. Ryan was still trying to process what was happening. One moment he was bewildered, the next he felt a cool, soft touch in his palm. Before he could react, his right hand was enclosed in hers. Then he heard his desk mate's calm voice. "The bell's about to ring. Let's go back to our seats." A gentle tug on his hand. And just like that, in front of a hallway full of petrified students, he was led back into the classroom by his Ice Queen desk mate. Just then, the shrill sound of the bell cut through the air. Bring! The sound shattered the silence in the hallway. Students snapped out of their daze and, without having time to process what they had just witnessed, scrambled back to their own classrooms. Only Leo remained, still trying to make sense of it all. He glanced at the equally stunned Samantha and Becca, then at the backs of Ryan and Ava as they disappeared into the classroom. And then he whispered, in complete awe, "Holy crap. That's legendary." In high school, a boy and a girl talking for too long could start rumors. Calling each other by their first names was a sign of intimacy. An accidental touch during a playful moment could make hearts pound. So, holding hands in public. The scene in the hallway had been witnessed by dozens of students, and it was bound to create a storm of gossip. The Ice Queen's bold move was destined to spread like wildfire, shaking up the social circles of Northwood High. But at that moment, the two people at the center of it all were back in their seats in the last row of the classroom as the bell rang. The atmosphere was strangely quiet. Ryan looked at his desk mate, trying to find the right words. He started but couldn't finish. The whole situation was too bizarre. He was still trying to wrap his head around it. None of this had happened in his first life. As if sensing his confusion, Ava spoke, her expression as calm as ever. "Don't get the wrong idea. I just can't stand girls who take advantage of people." She added, "It's just holding hands. Don't worry about it. Clap." While she said that, the tiny Ava inside was setting off celebratory fireworks. Woo! I held his hand. Ryan's first time holding a girl's hand in this life. Achievement unlocked. Having read his journals in her past life, Ava knew that his first time holding a girl's hand had been with Samantha, just 2 weeks before graduation. But in this life, she had successfully intercepted it. Take that, Samantha. Keep your grubby, manipulative hands to yourself. Unaware of his desk mate's inner turmoil, Ryan felt a sense of relief at her explanation. It made sense, and it fit her Ice Queen persona. But then he hesitated again. "So, about?" Ava seemed to anticipate his question. She maintained her cool demeanor. "And what I said about holding my hand whenever you want. I was just saying that. Don't take it seriously." Meanwhile, the tiny Ava inside was screaming, "You have to take it seriously. You can hold my hand whenever you want, as many times as you want. I owe you my life, so don't be shy." Ava looked at Ryan, her expression placid. "Any other questions?" He nodded honestly. "Yeah." He looked down at his right hand, which, since they had returned to the classroom, she had not let go of. "Can you let go now?" "Oh, sorry. I forgot." With a completely straight face, Ava released his hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But inside, the tiny Ava was sighing with regret. "Oops," he noticed. "I wanted to hold it a little longer. His hand is so warm. I want to hold it again." His hand now free, Ryan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. It wasn't that he was trying to be a saint. He was just afraid of dying again. Mr. Harris had been patrolling the hallway just now. If he had seen them, Ryan was pretty sure his second life would have been cut short. The last class of the morning was history. The teacher was a frail old man who spoke in a weak, listless voice. He droned on from his notes, completely lost in his own world, oblivious to whether his students were paying attention. Most of them weren't. They were either sleeping or secretly engaged in other activities, reading novels on their phones hidden under their desks, or sneaking a snack when the teacher wasn't looking. In the back row, Ryan thought about what had just happened. No matter her reasons, his desk mate had helped him out. It was only polite to thank her. He scribbled a note and passed it to her. "Thanks." She glanced at the note, then continued to stare at the history teacher, her face a mask of cool concentration. She wrote something on the note and pushed it back. "How are you going to thank me?" Ryan stared at the note. He was just being polite. Why was she taking it so seriously? How am I going to thank you? I gave you my life last time. How are you going to thank me? A tiny, indignant Ryan inside him slammed his fist on a tiny table. But then he calmed down. That was in his past life. And besides, she wasn't reborn. He wrote on the note again and pushed it back. How do you want me to thank you? This time, when she read the note, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. She quickly wrote a reply and pushed it back. Her handwriting was elegant but bold. But the words on the paper almost made him choke on his own saliva. Say, Ava, you're the best. Ryan stared. When I type question marks, it's not because I have a problem, it's because I think you have a problem. He couldn't help but look at his desk mate. She was still staring at the history teacher, her expression one of intense focus. It was hard to believe such a cool, aloof face could have written something so ridiculous. Did his Ice Queen desk mate have some kind of weird kink? Ryan was completely baffled. He could only conclude that he knew even less about her than he thought. But there was no way he was going to say that. His 30-something-year-old pride was on the line. He wrote another note and passed it back. No way. Pick something else. She glanced at the note and quickly wrote another reply. Then buy me lunch. Ryan stared at the note. He had a strange feeling he had just been played. Meanwhile, sitting beside him, Ava's lips curved into a smile. You silly boy. Did you really think you could outsmart me? The old history teacher, lost in the glories of ancient dynasties, droned on, completely losing track of time and running into the lunch break. When he finally finished, the students of homeroom 10 shot up from their seats, as if spring-loaded, quickly packed their things, and rushed out to get lunch with their friends. In the back row, Ryan had just stood up and reached the back door when someone called out to him. Ryan, my man. Leo vaulted over a row of desks with a move he thought was cool and sidled up to Ryan, a grin on his face. Let's go get some food. Today was your lucky day, hugged by the queen bee. Then she hold your hand. We have to celebrate. My treat. The scene in the hallway had been so shocking that it had taken Leo the entire history class to process it. After the initial disbelief, he had come up with a logical explanation. Since Ava and Ryan were desk mates, and Ava, despite her icy exterior, was a good person, it was only natural for her to step in when she saw her desk mate being bullied. As for the hand-holding, it was obviously just to spite Samantha. There was no way there was anything actually going on between them. With that thought, most of Leo's jealousy had dissipated. He threw an arm around Ryan's shoulders and joked, but seriously, man, that's the first time I've ever seen Queen Ava get so close to anyone. If she had lunch with you, I'd actually believe you two were dating, huh? Suddenly, a fragrant scent wafted past them, and a tall, beautiful figure walked over. Ava Sinclair's cool eyes swept over Leo, then settled on Ryan. Ready for lunch? 3 words, a simple, casual question, but it landed with the force of a bomb. Leo froze. His boisterous laughter died in his throat, as if he'd been choked. Ryan glanced at Leo, then pointed at his friend. Leo said he's treating. My weekly allowance is only $20. Every penny counts. Ava's brow furrowed slightly as she looked at Leo. You're treating? Her expression didn't change, but the temperature around them seemed to drop a few degrees. Leo, still in a daze, nodded vigorously. Yeah, my treat, my treat. He was ecstatic. The chance to have lunch with the legendary Ice Queen of Northwood High. He'd pay any price. But then he met Ava's cold, emotionless gaze, and a shiver ran down his spine. His voice faltered. I'm treating, or not. Ava looked at him. You're not. Leo nodded like a bobblehead. Right. I'm not treating. Ryan, you two go ahead. I just remembered, something came up at home. My mom's having another baby. With that, he turned and fled. Ryan stared after him, dumbfounded. Wow, what a world-class chameleon. With the third wheel successfully eliminated, Ava's gaze softened as she turned back to Ryan, her expression once again placid. Ready for lunch? There was no escaping it. Ryan sighed and turned to go. Let's go. From around the corner of the hallway, Leo peeked out, watching them leave. He swallowed hard and muttered, his voice trembling. No way. They're actually dating? Northwood High had 3 main buildings. The seniors were in the main hall. There were 15 senior homerooms, with 3 on each floor. Ryan's class, homeroom 10, was on the 4th floor. Down the stairs from the 4th floor, a small door by the 1st floor hallway led to a tree-lined path. To the right of the path was a small park where students would often walk, relax, or study. To the left was a chain-link fence enclosing the school's running track. At the end of the path were the cafeteria and the campus store. At noon, the path was flooded with students rushing to the cafeteria, a surging tide of people. These kids, a passing teacher muttered with a smile. They drag their feet to class, but when it comes to eating, they're faster than anyone. Standing at the beginning of the path, Ryan looked at the sea of people ahead and grimaced. The last class had run late. By the time they got to the cafeteria, there wouldn't be any seats left. And he glanced at his desk mate. The midday heat was rising, and she had taken off her long-sleeved uniform jacket, tying it around her waist like a skirt. With her ponytail, she looked both cool and capable. The track pants still accentuated her long, slender legs, and the jacket tied at her waist revealed a shockingly slim figure. Her short-sleeved uniform shirt showed off her pale, slender arms, so fair they seemed to glow. Just standing there, she was the most beautiful sight on campus. Taking the school queen to the cafeteria for lunch. In front of everyone. I'm probably going to end up on the school's hit list by tomorrow. With the risk assessment skills of a 30-something-year-old, Ryan made a quick decision. Let's eat off campus, he suggested. Ava nodded, her expression cool. Okay. She casually tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture was enough to make several passing boys stop in their tracks, their eyes wide with awe. Even Ryan's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't help but stare for a moment too long. Noticing his gaze, Ava seemed to misunderstand. She raised an eyebrow and held out her hand. Want to hold hands? Ryan. He immediately shook his head so fast it was a blur. No, that's okay. It was only his first day of being reborn. He had no desire to be beaten to death by a mob of jealous classmates. With that, he turned and practically fled toward the school gate. Left behind, Ava watched his retreating figure and pouted with a hint of disappointment. He's still so shy. That's okay. Teasing him is fun, too. And with a light spring in her step, she followed after him. Just outside the school gates was A.L.'s Diner, a small place famous for its wide variety of burgers and melts. The portions were generous, and the food was filling. The only downside was that it was a bit more expensive than the school cafeteria, so it was mostly frequented by students with larger allowances. Ryan was not one of them. With a weekly budget of $20, he had about $4 a day to spend. Walking into the diner, he felt an invisible weight settle on his shoulders. Being reborn had made his body young again, but his wallet had become just as slim. There was no time for nostalgia. A financial catastrophe was imminent. Ava, on the other hand, was in a great mood. She followed Ryan into the diner, her steps light as she looked around at the simple decor, a fond, nostalgic smile on her face. Lost in her thoughts, she was completely oblivious to the heavy burden her companion was carrying. They found an empty booth and sat down. Ryan looked up at the menu on the wall. Cheeseburger, $6. Patty melt, $8. Bacon cheeseburger deluxe, $9. It was horrifying. His scalp tingled. While he was panicking, Ava had already waved over the waitress and ordered a steak sandwich. $14. Then she turned to him. What are you getting? Ryan felt his heart bleed. I'll just have a grilled cheese. At $5, it was the cheapest thing on the menu. Ava frowned. That's it? You're not getting any meat. The tiny Ava inside was fuming. A growing boy like him needs his protein. Ryan took a deep breath. It's fine. I'm allergic to meat. The tiny Ryan inside was crying. I'm allergic to things that are expensive. Nonsense. Ava shot him a look that said she saw right through his lie. She took charge and changed his order to a patty melt. Then she added 2 cans of ice-cold root beer, opened one, and placed it in front of him. You need to eat more, she said coolly. You can't study on an empty stomach. Ryan just stared. It's easy for you to say when it's not your money. But the order was placed, so there was nothing he could do. He took a long gulp of the sweet, fizzy root beer, hoping it would soothe the pain in his wallet. Across the table, Ava was sipping her drink delicately through a straw. She looked at him and asked, her tone casual, Did you really spend most of your weekly allowance on Samantha Banks? Cough, cough, cough. Ryan choked, the root beer going down the wrong way. How did you know? I read your diary. Silly. The thought made her want to smirk, but on the outside, she remained perfectly composed. Everyone at school knows, she said, her voice a nonchalant drawl. I heard people talking. Ryan's head thudded onto the table. He was speechless. His reputation as a simp was that widespread. Seeing his silent misery, Ava assumed he was still hung up on Samantha. Her brow furrowed. This won't do. The man I came back to find can't be led astray by some manipulative user. She looked at him with a glimmer of concern. Her sweet, innocent desk mate was no match for a girl like Samantha. He'd be taken for everything he had. No, I have to set him straight. She cleared her throat. When Ryan looked up, she put on her cool, serious face and began her lecture. It's understandable for a boy your age to be curious about the opposite sex. But even boys need to learn to protect themselves. The world of relationships can be dangerous. You can't just let yourself be fooled by a girl's sweet talk. By the time you realize your mistake, it'll be too late. Ryan listened, a giant question mark slowly forming over his head. This was weird. Why was his desk mate suddenly giving him a lecture on relationships? The whole thing felt off. Seeing his expression, Ava thought he was being defiant. She smiled faintly. What? You don't believe me? You think you're too smart to be fooled? Ryan almost laughed. Of course he was. He was a reborn man with the soul of a 34-year-old. He'd seen it all. A teenage girl who wasn't even old enough to vote was trying to lecture him. That was rich. He was about to smile and explain, but his desk mate beat him to it. Freshman year, Samantha called you Riri once, and you spent your entire month's allowance on a CD for her. Last winter break, she said, "My Ryan," and you were so ecstatic you rode your bike to her house every morning for 2 weeks to bring her breakfast. This New Year's, she said she was thinking about holding your hand, and you gave her 2 months' worth of allowance money just to hear her say thanks. She continued, rattling off his history of simping with chilling accuracy. And she went on, listing every incident, every line, every detail. Ryan was dumbfounded. The tiny Ryan inside was just as stunned. His mind was a stampede of chaotic thoughts, with only 2 words echoing in the wind. Holy crap! Seeing his petrified expression, a flicker of a smile crossed Ava's cool face. There's more, she said, her lips curling slightly. Should I continue? She took a leisurely sip of her root beer, completely at ease. It's simple, really. I've read all his diaries. There's only one thing worse than having a dark, embarrassing past, and that's having someone narrate it back to you, in detail. First day of my new life. Ultimate social suicide. Ava's cool gaze swept over him. Convinced yet? Yeah. Ryan buried his face in the table, ashamed. The evidence was irrefutable. He had been a world-class simp in high school. There was no denying it. Suddenly, he lifted his head and looked at her, puzzled. How do you know all that in such detail? Ava's expression remained placid. She lied without batting an eye. Everyone knows. I heard people talking. Ryan's head thudded back onto the table. Oh, great. Social suicide, part 2. Seeing his misery, a smile flickered across Ava's face before she quickly suppressed it. So now you know? Then promise me you'll stay away from girls like that from now on. Ryan nodded, his expression grim. Absolutely. Not only would he stay away from them in the future, he wished he could have been reborn 2 years earlier to erase his dark past completely. Satisfied with his response, Ava continued her offensive while they ate. At your age, you need to focus. Getting to a good college should be your priority. You're right. So if Samantha comes looking for you again, ignore her. Okay, if any other girls want to hang out with you, learn to say no. Done. If someone like me asks you to buy them lunch, you should definitely refuse. Right. And if you notice any other girls in our class or our grade showing interest in you, report it to me immediately. No problem. Wait, what? Something about that last part didn't sound right. Ryan looked up, his eyes narrowed suspiciously. Why would I report it to you if another girl is interested in me? And why can't other girls treat me to lunch, but you can? Ava remained calm and composed, not a hint of guilt on her face. I'm a class president. It's my responsibility to make sure no one's academic performance is being affected. She added, and lunch is different. We're desk mates. It's perfectly normal for desk mates to eat together. Is that a thing? Ryan was skeptical. He scrutinized her face, but she looked so cool and composed, it was impossible to tell if she was lying. He slowly began to accept her explanation. A girl as cool and aloof as her probably wouldn't have a reason to lie to him about something like that. What would she have to gain? It's not like she was interested in him. He relaxed, a small smile playing on his lips. Besides, in his past life, he had been naive and easily fooled by a manipulator like Samantha. But now, he was a mature man with the mind of a 30-something. If his desk mate were lying or had some ulterior motive, he would definitely see right through it. He wouldn't be fooled again. Having come to a conclusion, he felt a wave of gratitude. His cool, detached desk mate was actually looking out for him out of a sense of responsibility as class president. He looked at her and said sincerely, "Thank you. See, he's even thanking me." The tiny Ava inside was rolling on the floor with laughter, but on the outside, Ava remained as cool as ever. "You're welcome. It's my duty." She paused. "So, how are you going to thank me?" Ryan stared at her. The gratitude he had been feeling vanished, leaving him speechless. "How do you want me to thank you?" Ava pretended to think for a moment, as if she hadn't been planning this all along. "Well," she said casually, "how about you say, 'Ava, you're the best'?" Ryan's face fell. Again with this? She met his gaze, her expression innocent, as if it were just a casual suggestion. Not happening. What would it take? Nothing. It's not happening. I'm paying for this meal. Ava, you're the best, he exclaimed, his expression so sincere he looked like a long-lost brother. His voice was filled with emotion, his acting skills Oscar-worthy. Ava listened, her expression unchanged. She gave a slight, non-committal nod. Then she gracefully stood up, reached out, and casually ruffled his messy dark hair. Good boy, she said, her voice light and airy. She walked over to the counter, pulled a $100 bill from her wallet with two slender fingers, and slapped it on the counter. Keep the change, she said to the owner. And with that, she walked out of the diner. As she left, the 18-year-old ice queen of Northwood High swayed her hips with a grace and elegance that was almost hypnotic. Ryan stared after her, dumbfounded. Then it hit him. Did she just pat my head? Meanwhile, outside the diner, the cool and composed ice queen was beaming on the inside. I gotta mess with him. So fun. His hair is so soft. I'm definitely doing that again. When Ryan finally came out of the diner, didn't go straight back to school. A few doors down from AL's diner was a small convenience store. Ava told him to wait outside while she went in to buy some wet wipes. For a high school boy to wait for a girl while she shopped was usually a sign of intimacy. But Ava, as cool as ever, had a perfectly logical explanation. It's normal for desk mates to go to the store together. Everyone does it. The desk mate excuse is pretty versatile, isn't it? Ryan was still a little skeptical, but he decided to go with it. After all, she had no reason to lie to him. What could she possibly want from him? So Ava went into the store, and Ryan waited outside. Just then, a familiar, delicate voice called out from behind him. Ryan. He turned to see Samantha coming out of the noodle shop next door. She stood on the steps, her arms crossed, looking down at him with a proud expression. So, she said, are you ready to apologize yet? With her arms crossed, Samantha looked down at Ryan from the steps of the noodle shop, a smug feeling bubbling inside her. The scene in the hallway earlier, when Ava Sinclair had taken Ryan's hand and walked away, had been a huge shock. She couldn't believe the school's legendary ice queen would stand up for a guy like him and hold his hand. But after thinking it over with her best friend Becca, she had concluded that it was all just a misunderstanding. A guy like Ryan could never be involved with a goddess like Ava Sinclair. It was probably just because they were desk mates. Ava likely felt sorry for him and decided to help him out. In fact, it was more likely that Ryan had begged and pleaded with her to put on a show in front of Samantha. The motive was simple. He's just trying to make you jealous, Becca had declared, a scornful smile on her face. I can't believe he's so manipulative, bringing in a big shot like Ava Sinclair to make you feel threatened. As if anyone would believe there's anything going on between them. The more he tries to pull these stunts, the more it proves he's still obsessed with you. Just ignore him, and I guarantee he'll come crawling back to you by the end of the day. And just as she had predicted, right after finishing her noodles, Samantha walked out of the shop to see Ryan standing by the convenience store, waiting for her. Her theory was confirmed. A proud smirk played on her lips, and her tone became even more commanding. I'm telling you now, she said, if you want me to forgive you this time, it's going to take more than just a few gifts. Apologize? Ryan looked at her, as if she were insane. Apologize for what? He was waiting for his desk mate. Where did this girl come from? Samantha just smiled confidently. You always eat in the cafeteria? You're only here at the school gate because you were waiting for me to come out. There's no need to be stubborn. Ryan had a laugh. How could someone so average be so confident? I wasn't waiting for you. Samantha let out another light laugh, as if she could see right through him. If you weren't waiting for me, then who were you waiting for? Ryan, I see through your little games. I know you're trying to make me jealous, which is why you went to all that trouble to get Ava Sinclair to play along with you. But do you really think I'd fall for such a childish trick? The mention of Ava's name made Ryan cringe as he remembered the social suicide scene in the diner. A vein throbbed in his temple. It was so embarrassing. He glared at the person responsible for his dark past. His desk mate was right. Getting involved with someone like her would only lead to misery. He decided he had wasted enough time on her. Yeah, you figured it all out. You're a real genius, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Are you done? If so, you can go now. I'm waiting for someone. His unexpectedly dismissive attitude caught Samantha off guard. She stared at the boy who had once been so eager to please her, and a surge of anger rose in her chest. What's with your attitude, Ryan? She snapped. I'm telling you, this is your last chance. Apologize to me right now, or you'll regret it. Just then, inside the convenience store, Ava had finished paying for her things and was about to leave. As she reached the door, she heard Samantha's angry voice. She paused, then quietly moved closer to the plastic curtain at the entrance, listening in. She wasn't going to reveal herself just yet. She wanted to see how her little desk mate would handle this, to see if her lesson had sunk in. Hearing Samantha's threat, Ryan raised an eyebrow. What do I have to regret? Samantha smiled, confident she had him cornered. If you don't apologize from now on, it's not just about holding hands. I, Samantha Banks, will never speak to you again. Even if you beg me, I won't give you the time of day. We're done. Ryan nodded. Sounds good to me, Samantha. The sudden turn of events almost gave her whiplash. It felt like she had just unleashed her ultimate move, expecting it to be a devastating blow, only for it to completely miss and leave her stumbling. She was furious. What do you mean by that? Ryan explained patiently. It means exactly what it sounds like. My desk mate told me I need to focus on my studies and stay away from shady girls. He looked at Samantha and added, she was talking about you. I'm shady? Samantha was so angry she felt dizzy. Ow, how dare you say that about me? Ryan looked innocent. It wasn't me. It was my desk mate. Samantha was about to lose it. And you just listen to whatever your desk mate says? A faint, mocking smile finally appeared on Ryan's face. Why should I listen to you instead of her? His words, combined with his smirk, were like a sword thrust, leaving Samantha speechless. He continued calmly. Besides, my desk mate is the school queen. She's beautiful, she's tall, and she's nice to listen to. Why wouldn't I listen to her? He looked at the stunned Samantha and delivered the final blow. Unlike you, you're short. And you're not that pretty. Unlike you, you're not that pretty. The simple words were a direct hit, piercing Samantha's heart. Ryan, you just wait. I'll never forgive you. The sweet, lovely belle of homeroom 7 stormed off, her voice thick with angry tears. Ryan was left standing there, drawing curious glances from passing students who probably thought he was some heartless jerk who had just broken a poor girl's heart. He didn't care. Was what he said too harsh? Compared to what she had done to him in his past life, it was nothing. Besides, he was just telling the truth. Compared to his desk mate, a girl who only knew how to act cute and manipulate naive boys was just average. Just then, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Ava walking out of the store. She was holding a pack of wet wipes and a few pieces of fruit candy she had gotten as change. She looked as cool and composed as ever. She glanced at him. Who were you talking to just now? Just someone passing by, he said casually. I don't know her. Ava nodded, pretending she didn't know anything. She casually handed him a piece of candy. This was part of the change. Have one. The tiny Ava inside was smiling, remembering his words. My desk mate is the school queen. She's beautiful. She couldn't help but feel a little smug. You sweet talker. You deserve a reward. They walked back to school without any further incident. In the classroom, students were trickling back in, most of them slumping over their desks for a nap. It was that post-lunch drowsiness. Ryan was feeling it too. He dropped his head onto his desk and dozed off. Sitting beside him, Ava popped a piece of candy into her mouth. She turned slightly, propping her chin on her hand, and watched him sleep, a small smile playing on her lips. She felt a little sweet too. At 1:40 p.m., the bell rang, waking the students from their slumber. With groans and sighs, they sat up, trying to shake off the sleepiness and prepare for the afternoon classes. Ryan was in humanities track class. After choosing their academic tracks, they had dropped physics and chemistry, leaving them with the 6 core subjects: English, math, history, geography, and government. The first class of the afternoon was geography, followed by government. With less than 2 months until the final exams, they were in full review mode. It was a relentless cycle of memorization, political theories, historical events, weather patterns, and landforms. After 2 classes, everyone's head was spinning. Only a few top students in the class seemed to be able to absorb the vast amount of information with ease. They were alert and engaged, their pens flying across their notebooks. Ava was at the top of that elite group. As the undisputed queen of Northwood High, her beauty was not her only asset. Her grades were also consistently at the top of her class. For 3 years, she had never ranked below 3rd in her grade. In her past life, she had scored a 658 on her final exams, earning her the 3rd highest score in the state and the top score in the city for humanities. She really is ridiculously perfect, Ryan thought, sneaking a glance at her. He couldn't help but admire the way she looked when she was focused on her studies. In contrast, he was a complete mess. In his past life, his grades had always been in the bottom half of the class. After he started simping for Samantha, they had plummeted even further, to the point where he almost didn't get into a 4-year college. Remembering this, Ryan's lips curved into a confident smile. But this time, things were different. Just then, a note was pushed across his desk by a slender, pale finger. He glanced at it. The handwriting was elegant but firm. "Stop smirking and pay attention." Ryan sighed. He looked at his desk mate. She was still staring at the front of the room, her expression one of intense focus. The strict supervision of the class president. He sheepishly turned his attention back to the lesson. As he looked away, he missed the faint smile that touched his desk mate's lips. "You silly boy, staring at me like that. Am I really that captivating?" The tiny Ava inside couldn't help but feel a little proud. She had no idea she had completely misread the situation. The last period of the day was a class meeting. Mr. Harris stood at the front of the room, his face grim. "The second round of mock finals is next week," he announced. "I expect all of you to prepare for it. There are 6 humanities track classes in your grade. In the last mock exam, our class's average score was the second lowest. We also had fewer students in the top 30 and top 50 than most other classes, and only one student in the top 10. It's embarrassing. I could barely hold my head up in the teacher's office." The students sat in silence, not daring to breathe, afraid of becoming the target of his wrath. In a back row, Ryan wasn't surprised. It had been the same in his past life. His class had always been one of the weaker ones. And since class performance was tied to teacher evaluations, it was no wonder Mr. Harris was so angry. He was lost in thought when he suddenly heard a familiar roar. "Ryan Miller, get up." He shot to his feet, his heart pounding. Mr. Harris was glaring at him, and the other students were looking at him with amusement. Mr. Harris slammed his hand on the podium. "You have a nerve to daydream. Do you even know what you scored on the last mock exam?" His score on the last mock exam? For someone who had just been reborn after more than a decade, that was a tough question. Fortunately, before Ryan had to rack his brain, Mr. Harris was already rattling off his scores, his voice dripping with disdain. Math, 71. English, 82. Literature, 74. And your combined score for history, government, and geography was 143. That's less than a passing grade for each subject. There are 49 students in this class, and you ranked 44th. You dropped 6 places from the midterm. Looking at the slacker in the back row, Mr. Harris felt a mix of frustration and disappointment. This Ryan Miller. When he first started high school, he was at least in the middle of the pack. But since sophomore year, his grades had been in a free fall. Now, with the final exams just around the corner, he was at the bottom of the class. As a dedicated teacher, Mr. Harris was frustrated by his students' lack of effort. But he was also a teacher whose performance was tied to his student scores. Every slacker who dragged down the class average was a hit to his own wallet. And it wasn't just about the money. The teacher of the other top humanities class, Mr. Reynolds, had always been his rival, and Reynolds' class always outperformed his. The man never missed an opportunity to rub it in his face. Just today, he had been subjected to another round of smug comments. He had been so angry, he had almost punched him. He had come into the class meeting fuming, and seeing Ryan daydreaming in the back had just reignited his anger. He unleashed all his frustration on him. Even after his tirade, he was still fuming. He gave Ryan an ultimatum. For this next mock exam, you will improve your score by at least 20 points. Stop dragging down the class average. If you don't, I'm calling your parents. Hearing this, many of the students snickered. One boy laughed out loud. "Sir, 20 points is a bit much for Ryan, don't you think? He's too busy chasing that girl from homeroom 7. He doesn't have time to study." His sarcastic comment was met with another round of laughter. Mr. Harris's face darkened. He glared at Ryan. "I don't care about any of that nonsense. You will raise your score by 20 points. I don't care how you do it. Cram for it, memorize everything, or get another student to tutor you. I don't care about the process, only the results." The boy who had spoken up before chimed in again. "Come on, sir. If Ryan asks another student for help, he'll just drag them down with him. He's so lovesick, he'll probably infect them, and then they'll both fail." The laughter in the classroom grew louder. Many of the top-ranking students shot wary glances at Ryan, a new sense of distance between them. They weren't like him. They were aiming for top scores on this exam. If Ryan used the teacher's words as an excuse to bother them for help, it would be a waste of their own precious study time. Amid the laughter, Ryan, who was still standing, seemed unfazed. In his past life, a situation like this would have left him humiliated and helpless. But not anymore. With the mind of a 30-something, he had developed a thick skin. He wasn't bothered by such childish taunts. Besides, improving his grades, which had seemed impossible in his past life, was now a piece of cake. None of them knew about the secret weapon he now possessed. So he just smiled and looked at Mr. Harris. "It's okay, sir. I can study on my own." He paused, then added sincerely, I'll try my best not to drag the class down. I'll aim for an improvement of, say, 200 points. His words were met with a fresh wave of uproarious laughter. The boy in the front was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. He pointed at Ryan. 200 points? Why don't you just say you're going to fly to the moon? I'd be surprised if you could even improve by 2 points. He turned to Mr. Harris. But at least he knows his place, sir. He knows none of the top students want to help him, so he's not even going to ask. That saves you some trouble, right? Ha ha ha. Mr. Harris frowned. He didn't like the boy's mocking tone, but he had a point. One slacker was bad enough. He couldn't risk him affecting the few top students he had. As for Ryan's claim of a 200-point improvement, he dismissed it as a childish boast. He cleared his throat. All right then, focus on studying on your own. If you have any questions, you can ask me or one of the other teachers. He was cut off by a cool, clear voice from the back of the room. He doesn't have to. I'll do it. The classroom fell silent. Every head turned toward the source of the voice. In the back row, next to the class slacker, the beautiful ice queen of Northwood High stood up, her posture tall and elegant. Ava's cold gaze swept over the classroom. The students who had been laughing at Ryan moments before now looked down, avoiding her eyes. She looked at Mr. Harris and, as if to make sure everyone had heard her correctly, repeated, her voice calm and steady, I'll tutor Ryan. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then the classroom exploded. What? The entire class was in an uproar. Ryan was stunned. He had been all set to make a grand, impressive statement, but before he could even get started, his desk mate had stood up and completely stolen his thunder. The students of Homeroom 10 couldn't believe their ears. They stared at the cool, poised Queen Ava, then at Ryan standing beside her, the whole scene seeming utterly surreal. As the school's queen bee, Ava's icy demeanor was legendary. Everyone knew she was proud and aloof, with few close friends, even among the girls. She was always focused on her own studies. It wasn't as if boys hadn't tried to get close to her before, using the excuse of asking for help with schoolwork, only to be coldly rejected. But now, for Ryan, a student at the bottom of the class, she was voluntarily offering to be his personal tutor. No way. The boy who had been mocking Ryan the loudest was the first to protest. He quickly added, Sir, Ava's grades are excellent, but she needs to focus on aiming for the top spot in our grade on this exam. She can't let Ryan drag her down. Mr. Harris was also taken aback by his star pupil's uncharacteristic offer. He hesitated, a frown creasing his forehead. That's a good point. Perhaps it's best if we just forget it. But Ava cut him off. It's fine, sir. As class president, it's my duty to help my classmates. Tutoring Ryan won't affect my own studies. In fact, explaining the concepts to him will help me solidify my own understanding. Her words were calm and logical. Mr. Harris found himself nodding in agreement. After a moment's thought, he made his decision. All right, the task of tutoring Ryan is yours, as long as you're sure it won't interfere with your own review. He then turned to Ryan, his tone instantly shifting from gentle encouragement to a harsh command. And you, Miller, you'd better appreciate this opportunity and learn from Miss Sinclair with humility. Don't you dare waste her time or negatively impact her studies, or you'll have me to answer to. Ryan sighed. Understood. They both sat down. Mr. Harris continued with the other class announcements. In the back row, Ryan leaned over to his desk mate and whispered, You really don't have to. I can handle it on my own. Her cool, calm voice came back. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not doing it specifically for you. It's just my duty as class president and your desk mate. Ryan sighed again. Oh, thanks. Ava replied, You're welcome. Her expression was as cool and composed as ever. But the truth was, when she had seen everyone in the class mocking Ryan, she had been furious. She had stood up without a second thought, determined to defend him. You don't want to tutor my adorable desk mate? Phoenix. He doesn't need you anyway. I'm all he needs. Of course, it wasn't just about defending him. The tiny Ava inside was now beaming. One-on-one tutoring sessions. Another perfectly legitimate reason to get closer to my little desk mate. So where should we start? Maybe hand-in-hand instruction. After the class meeting, the bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. It was evening now. Northwood High had mandatory evening study session from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. So after class, the students swarmed out of the classroom and headed to the cafeteria. A few girls from the class, who were slightly closer to Ava than others, invited her to have dinner with them. Ryan went to the cafeteria with his friend Leo. While they were eating, Leo was practically bowing down to Ryan in admiration. Dude, you're a legend. First lunch and now this. Queen Ava has never tutored anyone before. and you get to be the first. You're so lucky getting to have private sessions with her. Even if you bomb the exam and missed her. Harris calls your parents, it's totally worth it. Ryan shot him a look. Why couldn't his friend be more optimistic? Who says I'm going to bomb? I don't need a tutor. I'm going to improve by at least 200 points this time. Leo stared at him, then shook his head with a sigh. Wow, a one-on-one with Queen Ava has really gone to your head, hasn't it? Ryan rolled his eyes. Don't believe me, then. Leo got a little more serious. It's not that I don't believe you, man. It's just, what you're saying is insane. You got a 370 last time. A 200-point improvement would put you at 570, which is top 15 in the class. That's not something just anyone can do. A normal person couldn't. But a reborn person was not a normal person. Thinking of his secret weapon, a mysterious smile played on Ryan's lips. He looked at Leo. Gonna if I improve by at least 200 points on this exam. Leo didn't even hesitate. He slapped his chest. I'll streak across the football field at night. 3 laps. Whoa, Ryan was shocked. He had just been thinking of a few free meals. He hadn't expected his friend to be so bold. All right, Ryan said, nodding. To be fair, he added, and if I lose? Leo looked at him with the earnestness of a true friend. If you lose, man, I won't make you do anything crazy. He then leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Just tell me your secret. How did you get Queen Ava to notice you? You could even teach a class on it. Ryan stared at him. Meanwhile, Ava was having dinner with a few of her female classmates, and she was also being bombarded with questions. The 3 girls she was with were among the prettier and smarter students in their class. They were closer to Ava than most, so they felt comfortable asking her some personal questions. Ava, why did you agree to tutor Ryan Miller? Asked Tiffany, the literature class representative and one of the class beauties. I've never seen you offer to help anyone before. The other 2 girls nodded vigorously, their eyes gleaming with curiosity. It wasn't just the one-on-one tutoring. When you added in the fact that she had hugged him after her nightmare that morning and the rumored hand-holding incident in the hallway, it was hard not to connect the dots and let your imagination run wild. Could it be that the legendary Ice Queen of Northwood High and that slacker Ryan were secretly involved? Faced with her friend's curious stares, Ava just shrugged, her tone casual. It's nothing. I'm a class president. It's my duty to help my classmates. She used the same excuse she had given Mr. Harris. Tiffany was skeptical. That sounds so official. But I've never seen you help anyone else before, especially not a guy. Ava's expression remained placid. It was just a coincidence. He's my desk mate, so it's convenient for me to help him. Another girl pressed. But what about this morning when you hugged him? And I heard you held his hand in front of that girl from homeroom 7. Ava lied without batting an eye. All coincidences. She then looked at her friends, a faint smile playing on her lips. What else could it be? It's not like I have a crush on him, right? Her words seemed to satisfy them. They looked at each other and nodded in agreement. That's true. You're the Queen of Northwood. You'd never have a crush on a slacker like him. I knew it. It had to be a coincidence. Ava was just being nice. The idea of the Ice Queen of Northwood High having a crush on a boy from the bottom of the class was so ridiculous, they couldn't even entertain it. It had to be a coincidence. Little did they know that the tiny Ava inside was smiling like a cunning fox. So easy to fool them. The time wasn't right yet. It was better if no one knew the truth for now. She had to maintain her persona, or things would get too complicated. Besides, she was enjoying the current situation. It was comfortable, and she could tease her little desk mate whenever she wanted. So, no need to make a public announcement just yet. She would take her time, but just as she was feeling pleased with herself, the conversation took an unexpected turn. You know, that Ryan guy isn't all bad. I mean, Samantha Banks was into him, and she's pretty picky. He's a little shy, but he's actually pretty cute. He's got that sweet, boy-next-door look. Tiffany's eyes lit up. She propped her chin on her hands, a thoughtful expression on her face. That's my type. If you're not interested, Ava, maybe I'll give it a try one day. Her words hung in the air. Ava, who had been quietly eating, slammed her fork down on the table with a loud clatter. The 3 girls jumped, startled. Ava looked up, her gaze sweeping over them. The mock exams are next week, she said, her voice cold. You should be studying. Stop thinking about other things. Her tone was so authoritative, the 3 girls immediately straightened up and nodded obediently. Little did they know that Ava was secretly breathing a sigh of relief. That was a close one. Someone almost tried to steal the food from my bowl. After dinner, Ryan and Leo went back to the classroom. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the campus. They sat at their desks for a while, and then Ava and her friends returned. Ryan noticed the 3 girls sneaking glances at him and whispering among themselves. Just then, Ava sat down beside him, her cool melodic voice cutting through the air. Get ready. Which subject do you want to start with? So the tutoring was starting now. Ryan hesitated. He still felt bad about taking up her time. Maybe we should just forget it. I can study on my own. Ava paused, her expression unreadable. You think you don't need my help? Before he could answer, she reached in her desk and pulled out 2 English worksheets. She placed them in front of him. Do the fill-in-the-blank sections on these. She looked at him, her tone cool. If you get less than 8 wrong on both of them combined, I'll believe you can do it on your own. Ryan took the worksheets and smiled. All right, fill in the blanks. It's been a while. Though he thought that, a confident smile played on his lips. Meanwhile, watching him pick up a pen, Ava was just as confident. These were worksheets from the neighboring magnet school, and they were notoriously difficult. She estimated that Ryan would get at least half of the questions wrong. When he saw his score, he would have no choice but to accept her help. A small smile touched her lips at the thought. However, just 20 minutes later, when the completed worksheets were placed in front of her and she had quickly checked them against the answer key, her cool composure finally cracked. Her mouth fell open in disbelief. The 2 fill-in-the-blank sections. A total of 30 questions. He had gotten every single one of them right. Ava meticulously checked the 2 English worksheets against the answer key again, and then a third time. When she confirmed, yet again, that there were no mistakes, her eyes widened with disbelief. The neighboring school, Stone Creek High, was another top-tier school just like Northwood. Their recent mock exam papers were known to be slightly more difficult than their own. On these 2 fill-in-the-blank sections, most students at Stone Creek would have made at least 3 or 4 errors on each. Even for Ava, a certified academic genius who consistently ranked in the top 3 of her grade, one of the tricky preposition questions had tripped her up. But her deskmate, he had aced both sections, not a single error. For a rare moment, the Ice Queen's brain felt like it was malfunctioning. She looked Ryan up and down, her expression a mixture of suspicion and confusion. This wasn't right. Based on what she knew of him from her past life, and from devouring every single one of his journals, her desk mate's grades had been on a steady decline since sophomore year. He was, without a doubt, near the bottom of the class. His English scores had always hovered around the 80s out of 150. How could he possibly have gotten a perfect score so easily? And in just 20 minutes? Ryan, however, looked completely relaxed. He was even enjoying the rare side of his desk, mate looking flustered and cute. So you believe me now? He asked, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. For the first time since his rebirth, he finally felt like he had the upper hand. His words, however, sounded like a challenge to Ava. Her eyebrows shot up. The competitive spirit of the billionaire CEO from her past life resurfaced. You little punk, you're challenging me, are you? Bring it on. She quickly regained her composure, her face returning to its usual cool mask. Not bad, she said with a noncommittal nod. Those worksheets were pretty easy. She then pulled another worksheet from her English textbook. She covered her own answers with a piece of tape and handed it to him. Her eyes met his, her voice as cool as ever. Try this one. Ryan met her gaze. For a moment, sparks seemed to fly between them. He raised an eyebrow and smiled. No problem. And so, he began again, his pen flying across the paper. Once again, he was incredibly fast. Just 10 minutes later, he handed the third worksheet back to his deskmate. You did that so fast. You might regret not checking your work, Ava commented, pretending to be nonchalant, but her hands moved quickly to take the worksheet. She took a deep breath, peeled off the tape, and began to check his answers. The process was short. A moment later, it was done. Ava gasped, a look of even greater shock on her face. He had gotten them all right. Again, once could be luck, or maybe he had seen the worksheet before. But twice? That couldn't be explained away so easily. The third worksheet Ava had given him wasn't even a regular school assignment. It was from an English competition she had found for herself, just to challenge her own skills. The fill-in-the-blank questions on that worksheet were far more difficult than any regular mock exam, filled with long, complex sentences that were hard to even understand. Even Ava, with all her academic prowess, had fallen for a few of the clever traps. She had gotten 3 out of the 15 questions wrong. If any of the other top students in their class had attempted it, they would have likely gotten at least 5 or 6 wrong. But for him, it had taken only 10 minutes to produce another perfect score. Ava couldn't help but stare at her deskmate, her eyes filled with utter shock and disbelief. The tiny Ava inside was speechless, her mouth forming a perfect O. Is this the same deskmate I know? The one who used to complain in his diary about how hard and annoying fill-in-the-blank questions were. How did he suddenly become an English competition champion? Unaware of his desk mate's inner turmoil, Ryan felt a sense of accomplishment after finishing the 3 worksheets. Competition questions? Not so tough after all. It had been a while since he'd tackled high school material, but the skills he had honed were still there, practically etched into his very being. Ryan didn't know that his desk mate had read every single one of his high school diaries. But even if she had, she couldn't have known what had happened after. After his poor performance on the final exams, Ryan had barely gotten into a second-tier university. His parents had used most of their savings to send him there. Seeing the gray hairs on their heads, he had been overcome with guilt and regret. In college, he had completely turned his life around. He studied relentlessly, working part-time as a tutor to pay for his living expenses. After graduation, his first job was at a well-known tutoring center where he taught for 3 years. He became an expert in all high school subjects, and in just 1 year, he was one of the top tutors of the center. And his specialty was high school academics. So there it was, his secret weapon. 3 years of experience as a teacher, countless hours spent poring over exam papers and explaining concepts to students. That vast reservoir of knowledge was still with him. Now, reborn as a high school student, facing these subjects again was like reuniting with old friends. Or, to be more accurate, it was a complete and utter curb stomp. First English, then literature, then math, government, history, and geography. Ryan recited classic literary passages from memory, his words flowing smoothly without a single stutter. Math was a bit more challenging, but he could still solve the toughest problems from other schools' exams, getting at least 80% of the points. And when it came to the humanities subjects, he was once again in his element, dissecting questions with ease. At one point, Ava's eyes lit up as she checked his answers. "You got this one wrong," she exclaimed, a rare note of excitement in her voice. But then he just glanced at the answer key and said casually, "The answer key is wrong." Ava looked closer. He was right. A small mountain of worksheets and test booklets now sat on the desk in front of them. Having passed every test with flying colors, Ryan leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and looked completely at ease. Piece of cake. With 3 years of experience as a top-tier tutor, he was like a master swordsman from a martial arts novel, able to see through any trick and solve any problem with effortless grace. Of course, it had been a while, and some of the knowledge was a bit rusty. But with a little time to review, his bold promise to Mr. Harris, a 200-point improvement on the next mock exam, was definitely within reach. He looked at his deskmate, who was staring at him with a rare, dazed expression. He raised an eyebrow. "So, you believe me now?" The tiny Ryan inside was already crowing with triumph, his hands on his hips, laughing at the sky. After a full day of being led around by his beautiful deskmate, he had finally regained the upper hand. Sweet victory. Ava finally snapped out of it. She forced her expression back to its usual cool composure and nodded slightly. Not bad. She couldn't help but study him again, the question still nagging at her. "How did you suddenly get so good at school?" Ryan was prepared for this question. He had rehearsed his answer while he was taking the tests. He lied without batting an eye. "It wasn't sudden. I've actually been studying secretly for a while now. I was planning to surprise everyone on the next mock exam." It was a flimsy excuse, but it was better than telling her he was a reincarnator. She would never believe the truth anyway. Ava was still skeptical. She looked him up and down, a feeling of unease settling in her. Secretly studying? If that were true, how could she, who had read all his diaries, not know about it? Will he really keep something like that out of his journal? But after a moment's thought, she decided to accept his explanation. It was the only logical one. What other reason could there be? It wasn't like her desk mate had also been reborn. Seeing that she had bought his story, Ryan smiled. "So, you don't have to worry about tutoring me anymore. I can handle it on my own." Ava hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Her feelings were a mix of joy and disappointment. On the one hand, she was thrilled. If Ryan's grades were as bad as they had been in her past life, they would have ended up at different colleges, and a long-distance relationship was never a good thing. But now, that problem was solved. The tiny Ava inside was staring at him, her eyes wide with wonder, as if he were a precious treasure. That's my desk mate. He was secretly hiding all this talent. My instincts were right. He's not a slacker at all. He's a genius. But on the other hand, the tiny Ava was also a little sad. Her plan to get closer to him through tutoring, to have an excuse to touch his cheek or ruffle his hair, was now up in smoke. But she was, after all, a top student and a former CEO. Her mind raced, and in a flash, she had a new plan. Her eyes lit up. "I've got it." During the last study hall of the evening, Ryan was casually reviewing his history textbook, highlighting key points. Suddenly, A fragrant scent wafted toward him. He turned to see his desk mate leaning in close, her expression as cool as ever. "Are you busy?" she asked, her voice calm. "If not, can you help me with this problem?" She pushed an English worksheet toward him and pointed to a reading comprehension section. "I'm having trouble with this one." A question mark slowly formed over Ryan's head. Question mark. What? He thought he must have misheard. The top student in their class, one of the best in their grade, was asking him for help. He had just shown off his skills, but even so, she had no reason to ask him for help. What kind of problem could possibly stump her? He looked at the worksheet. More question marks appeared. It wasn't even that hard. It was a standard reading comprehension passage. At least 10 or 20 students in their class could have done it. He looked at her, confused. "You can't do this?" She met his gaze, her expression cool and composed. "No, I can't." Ryan was even more bewildered. Was he missing something? Was there some hidden trap in the passage that he couldn't see? He leaned in, determined to figure it out. Sitting beside him, Ava watched him study the problem with intense concentration. The tiny Ava inside was beaming. If the mountain will not come to Muhammad, then Muhammad must go to the mountain. If I can't tutor him, then he can tutor me. Well done, Ava. You're a genius. Ryan's initial goal was simple. Don't be a burden to his desk mate. He never imagined that after proving his academic prowess, the burden would shift squarely onto his own shoulders. "Ryan, I don't get this problem. Got a minute? Can you look at this history question for me? Is this a multiple pronunciation character? I forgot. Why is the answer to this multiple choice question C?" It wasn't just that he was helping her. As he patiently explained the concepts, he couldn't shake the feeling that her attention wasn't on the worksheet at all. He kept catching glimpses of her beautiful eyes darting over his face, a look of amusement in them. But every time he looked up, she would be staring intently at the paper, a picture of perfect concentration. The moment he would resume his explanation, he would feel her gaze on him again. He'd look up again. Nothing. She would just look back at him, her expression a mix of cool detachment and innocent curiosity. "What's wrong? Aren't you going to continue?" Ryan sighed. "It's nothing." This strange dance continued throughout the evening. His desk mate seemed to be possessed by an insatiable thirst for knowledge, an endless stream of questions and worksheets coming his way. "Ryan, look at this. And this one. This one too." When she asked for his help for the 11th time that night, he finally snapped. He pointed to the top of the worksheet. "This is the line for your student ID number. You need help figuring out how to write your own ID number?" "Oh, my mistake." With a perfectly straight face, Ava flipped the paper over and pointed to another question. "Then look at this one." Ryan stared at her, his face a mask of exasperation. She just looked back at him, her expression as calm as ever. He gave up. With a sigh, he picked up a pen to start explaining. As he reached for it, she did the same, as if to hand it to him. Their fingers brushed, and then, as if by accident, her hand closed around his. The atmosphere froze. He could feel the cool, soft touch of her skin against his. He looked up, a question mark hovering over his head. She looked back at him, her expression still perfectly placid. "My mistake. I was trying to give you the pen." He looked down at his hand, still captured in hers. "So, are you going to let go now?" She nodded. "Okay." And with a cool, detached air, she released his hand. The tiny Ava inside was giggling. "Oops, how clumsy of me, Ava. I'll definitely do that again next time." The entire study hall period was spent with Ryan tutoring his desk mate. When the final bell rang, he let out a long, exhausted sigh. Tutoring her was more tiring than taking 10 exams in a row. He glanced over at her. She seemed to be ready for more, picking up another workbook. "Oh, and there's this one." Ryan shot up from his seat, as if spring-loaded. "School's out. Time to go home." In a flash, he had swept his books into his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and flipped his chair onto his desk. The whole sequence was a blur of motion. Ava blinked. By the time she looked up, he was already gone, a flash of motion disappearing out the back door. She couldn't help but smile at his hasty retreat. "Silly boy, why are you running? It's not like I'm going to eat you." She quickly packed her own bag and was about to follow him when someone called out to her from behind. "Miss Sinclair, wait." She paused and turned to see Trevor Wallace, the English class representative, walking toward her. He was the same boy who had mocked Ryan during the class meeting that afternoon. A frown creased her brow. The delay meant she might not be able to catch up to Ryan, and she wasn't happy about it. Her expression turned even colder. "What is it?" Seeing that she had actually stopped for him, a pleased smile spread across Trevor's face. He quickly put on a serious, sincere expression. "I just wanted to talk to you. I know the teacher gave you the task of tutoring Ryan, but a slacker like him is a lost cause. Wasting your time on him will only affect your own studies." I think you should just forget about it. He thought his words were thoughtful and considerate. He even added, if you're worried about what to tell the teacher, I can explain it to him for you. He was feeling pretty good about himself, proud of his gentlemanly gesture. But his words only made Ava's frown deepen. Her expression turned even colder. Are we close? She asked, her voice dripping with ice. Huh? Trevor was taken aback. The unexpected question left him speechless. Ava cut him off, her voice even frosty. Let me correct you. It wasn't the teacher's assignment. I volunteered to tutor Ryan. And another thing. She paused, her cold gaze sweeping over him. I don't need anyone else worrying about my business. We're just classmates. I hope you'll remember that and keep your distance. I don't want to hear you say anything like that again. With that, she turned and walked out the back door, leaving him standing there. A wave of frustration and indignation washed over Trevor. He couldn't help but blurt out, But you and Ryan are just classmates too? Ava paused at the door. She turned, her gaze cool and detached. It's different. We're desk mates. The bike ride home from school took about 10 minutes. Ryan's family lived on the 13th floor. As the elevator ascended, he felt a strange sense of nervousness. When the doors opened, he walked down the familiar hallway. The shoe cabinet, the random items stacked against the wall, the faint, familiar smell of food wafting from his apartment. It all felt so real. The nervousness began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm. He reached his front door, took out his key, and unlocked it. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The first thing he saw was the familiar living room, bathed in the warm, soft glow of the evening light. A middle-aged woman was sweeping the floor. Mom, he said. Hearing his voice, his mother, Sharon Miller, looked up, a bright smile spreading across her face. Ryan, you're home. She turned and called toward the kitchen. George, our son is home. The sound of hurried footsteps came from the kitchen. His father, George Miller, still in his apron and holding a spatula, rushed out. He grinned when he saw Ryan. You're back. Come on in, take your shoes off. I made you a late-night snack. He then turned to his wife. What do you mean, your son? He's my son, too. Sharon retorted. He gets his good looks from me, so of course he's my son. You got a problem with that, George? She shot him a sideways glance. His father, long accustomed to being henpecked, immediately surrendered. No problem, no problem. Your son, your son. Watching his parents' familiar bickering, Ryan felt a smile tug at his lips, but his nose began to sting. A flood of memories washed over him. In his past life, after he had barely gotten into a second-tier college, his parents had swallowed their pride and called in every favor they had. They had scraped together all their savings to send him to the best school they could afford. He remembered them coming home late one night, exhausted but trying to sound cheerful. It's all set. You can at least get into East Bay Tech with your score. That's the best we can do for you, son. The rest is up to you. Later that night, he had overheard them talking in their bedroom. I heard the Johnson boy next door got a lower score than Ryan, but his dad knows the dean at East Bay University, and he got him in. Our Ryan is so smart. He just had a bad day on the exams. He could have gotten into a better school. There was a moment of silence. Then he heard his father's heavy sigh. It's our fault. We just don't have the connections. Another memory. Spurred by that late-night conversation, he had worked his tail off in college. He was at the top of his class, earning scholarships and working part-time to pay for his expenses. After graduation, he had thrown himself into his work, climbing the corporate ladder. But as his career took off, he became busier. His parents would call often, and he would talk endlessly about his work while they listened patiently, happy for his success, but always ending with the same concerned advice. Don't work too hard. You can't earn all the money in the world. Get some rest. Take care of yourself, and come home for a visit when you have time. But he had been so busy, he had rarely gone back. One time, years later, when he did go home, his parents were overjoyed. They were in their late 60s then, their hair streaked with gray, but his father had still eagerly rolled up his sleeves to cook him a feast. He had sat on the sofa with his mother, who had happily handed him her phone and asked for his help with some new apps. Your Aunt Susan's daughter taught her how to use TikTok and those special effects. Can you show me? When he opened the app and showed her a few filters, he landed on an old age filter that turned his face into that of a wrinkled old man. It was a funny sight, but his mother was delighted. Take some more pictures. Save them in the album so I can show your father. Then she had added, almost as an afterthought, otherwise your father and I probably won't get to see you when you're old. That one sentence, even now, made his eyes well up. In his past life, he had not been there to care for his parents in their old age. Instead, they had had to bury their own son. He had been a terrible son. Looking at his parents now, still relatively young and healthy, He rushed forward and wrapped them in a tight hug. George and Sharon were taken aback. "What's wrong? Did something happen at school?" Ryan lifted his head, trying to control his emotions, and forced a smile. "Nothing. I just missed you." A little while later, the three of them were sitting at the dining table, eating the late-night snack. It wasn't a fancy meal, but it tasted of home. Ryan devoured his food, and his parents watched him, smiling. "Slow down. No one's going to steal it from you. You eat like a wild animal." While they watched their son eat, they chatted casually. But soon, their conversation caught Ryan's attention. Sharon said, "George, how are things at the factory?" George replied, "Not great. We're barely scraping by. How about you?" "Our plant is not doing well either. There are rumors of layoffs." Sharon frowned, a worried expression on her face. "I don't know what to do. If I leave now, I could get a severance package. But if I stay, they're going to cut my pay. I just don't know which is the right choice." Hearing his mother's words, Ryan remembered. He had lived through this exact moment in his past life. In 2007, when he was a junior, the state-owned factory where his mother worked was indeed struggling, and there were layoffs. His mother had chosen to take a pay cut and stay. But a couple of years later, the factory went bankrupt and was sold off. In the end, she had lost her job anyway. The truth was, she had been hesitant even back then. Ryan knew his mother had always dreamed of opening her own business. She was a woman with ideas and ambition, but she had been held back by a traditional mindset that prioritized stability over risk. And in part, she had been held back by him. "I think you should just stay," his father said, shaking his head. "We're not cut out for running a business. Besides, Ryan is in his senior year now. It's a crucial time for him. At least with your factory job, you have time to look after things at home. If you start a business, you'll have even less time for him." The first part of his father's argument hadn't convinced her, but the mention of her son did the trick. Though a flicker of disappointment crossed her face, she nodded. "You're right. I'll go talk to my supervisor and tell him I'll take the pay cut." Listening to his parents, Ryan felt a warm spread through his chest, but also a pang of guilt. If it weren't for him, his parents wouldn't have had to be so cautious. His mother might have had the chance to pursue her dream. But now that he was reborn, he could change things. He wouldn't let himself have any regrets, and he wouldn't let his parents have any either. He looked up at them. "I think you should quit, Mom," he said. "Start your own business. It's a great idea. Think about it. The factory is already struggling. Even if you take a pay cut, it might not last for more than a few years. When it goes bankrupt, you'll still be out of a job. It's better to take the severance package now and take a chance. Besides," he added with a grin, "if you make it big, you can buy me an apartment in the city when I go to college, right?" His logic was sound, and his final, joking remark actually seemed to pique his mother's interest. That's not a bad idea, and it would be good for Ryan to have his own place when he goes off to college. His father also seemed to see the sense in it, but he still had his reservations. "But what about your studies? Someone needs to be here to look after you." Ryan smiled. "Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle my schoolwork on my own." His mother scoffed. "Oh, please. If that were true, you wouldn't have ranked in the 40s in your class on the last mock exam. Your father and I can't just stop worrying." Ryan looked her straight in the eye. "That's because I wasn't trying before. It's different now. The next mock exam is next week. I'll show you. I'll get in the top 10 in my grade. Easy." Top 10 in the grade. His parents exchanged a look and burst out laughing. "All right, forget top 10 in the grade. If you can get into the top 10 in your class on this next exam, I'll listen to you. I'll quit my job and start my own business." That was exactly what he wanted to hear. He held out his hand. "Deal." His mother slapped his hand with a grin, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Deal." After their late-night snack, Ryan went to his room. As he was closing the door, he could hear his parents talking in the living room. "George, did you notice? Ryan seems different today. You felt it too? He just hugged us out of nowhere. It almost gave me a heart attack. And all that talk about your job. He sounded so grown-up. I'm just glad he's finally getting serious about his studies. He even promised to get into the top 10. Do you think he can do it? Top 10 is not that easy. Wait, why is he my son all of a sudden?" Their playful bickering filled the apartment with a warm, comforting sound. Ryan smiled and gently closed the door. He didn't go straight to bed. He sat down at his desk, took out his textbooks and worksheets, and took a deep breath. He tried to summon the feeling he had had in his past life as a tutor, the feeling of being completely immersed in his work. It was time to get to it. The next morning, bright sunlight streamed through the window, waking Ryan from a deep sleep. He stretched and yawned. He had been so focused on his studies last night. He had done his homework and 2 extra worksheets, one for history and one for English. He hadn't gone to bed until 2:30 a.m. He had no idea what time it was now. Wait a minute. His eyes shot open. What time is it? He threw on his clothes, stuffed his books into his backpack, and rushed out of his room, calling out a hasty goodbye to his parents, who were having breakfast in the living room. He flew down the stairs, jumped on his bike, and pedaled as fast as he could toward the school. He couldn't believe it. On his second day of being reborn, he was about to be late for school because he had stayed up late studying. The thought of Mr. Harris's grim face made him shudder, and he pedaled even faster. The 10-minute ride was cut down to 7. He skidded to a stop at the school gate, jumped off his bike, and was about to rush in when he heard a voice call out from behind him. "Ryan Miller, stop right there." He froze and turned to see Samantha Banks, her friend Becca, and 2 other girls walking toward him. The one who had called out to him was Becca. Seeing who it was, he immediately turned to leave. He was in a hurry. He didn't have time for their drama. But the girls had already caught up to him. Becca, seeing him trying to leave, shouted again, her voice even more angry. Samantha was sure she had Ryan exactly where she wanted him. She didn't know what had gotten into him, why her once loyal puppy was suddenly acting so cold. But in her mind, it was all just a game. He was trying to play hard to make himself seem more important. But she was not going to fall for it. She saw right through his childish tricks. And he was going to pay for his behavior yesterday. No one treated her with such disrespect. She had specifically chosen this time and place, the school gate, in front of everyone, to confront him. She had brought Becca and 2 other friends to back her up. She knew Ryan was shy and thin-skinned. She was going to pressure him, force him to apologize in public. Once she had broken his pathetic, newly grown spine, he would go back to being her obedient little simp. Apologize. You have to apologize. Becca and the other 2 girls surrounded him, their voices growing louder and more insistent. The pressure was mounting. Most 18-year-old boys would have cracked by now, but Ryan seemed completely unfazed. He looked at the 3 girls, who were chattering like angry birds, and said, "Oh." Then he turned to leave, as if they weren't even there. His complete indifference was like a slap in the face. Becca was so angry she felt like she was going to explode. She lunged forward and grabbed the handlebars of his bike. "You're not going anywhere." The other 2 girls quickly moved to her side, blocking his path. "That's right. Not until you apologize." "Apologize." Samantha stood to the side, her expression one of pitiful innocence, her eyes welling up with tears. But inside, she was gloating. This was why she had brought her friends. She didn't have to do anything but play the victim. Becca and the others were known for being fierce and sharp-tongued. They would make sure Ryan apologized. She continued to play her part, her head bowed, as if she were on the verge of tears. But out of the corner of her eye, she shot a mocking look at Ryan. "Now what are you going to do?" The situation seemed to have reached a stalemate. Becca had a death grip on his bike. The 3 girls were blocking his way, their faces set in a grim determination. Anyone else would have given in. Becca's eyes glinted with triumph. Samantha straightened up, ready to receive his apology. But then Ryan turned his head and in a loud, clear voice called out toward the school gate. "Excuse me, sir, they won't let me go to class." In an instant, Becca and her friends froze. Samantha's jaw dropped. She stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. They had imagined every possible reaction from him, but this was not one of them. A grown man, cornered by a few teenage girls, was telling on them. Just then, a middle-aged teacher who was on duty at the gate frowned and started walking toward them. Becca's courage evaporated. She immediately let go of the bike. The other 2 girls quickly stepped aside, not wanting to get in trouble. The seemingly impossible situation had been solved with the simplest, most effective solution. Ryan calmly pushed his bike past the stunned girls and walked through the school gate. Seeing him just walk away, Becca was overcome with a wave of frustration and anger. "Ryan, what kind of man are you? You won't even apologize. You're so petty, no girl would ever like you." Her words were just an angry outburst. But then a cool, clear voice cut through the air. "I would." Suddenly, the low rumble of an engine filled the air. A sleek, black Maybach pulled up to the school gate and came to a smooth stop. The back door opened, and a tall, beautiful figure stepped out, drawing the attention of everyone at the gate. Ava Sinclair strode forward, her long legs carrying her with a grace and confidence that seemed to make the very ground tremble. She was as cool and stunning as ever, her presence commanding. She walked straight up to Ryan and said, her voice calm and clear, "We're going to be late. Let's go." And then, as everyone watched in stunned silence, the Ice Queen of Northwood High reached out and took Ryan's hand. And As if they were the only two people in the world, they walked past the shocked and horrified Samantha and her friends and into the school, hand in hand. Like a fairy tale couple, walking off into the sunset. The two teenagers walked hand in hand through the school grounds, a silent, surreal procession. They didn't stop until they reached the fork in the path leading to the underground parking garage. Ryan turned to Ava. "Thanks for that," he said. He had probably solved the problem with his "I'm telling the teacher" move, but he had to admit, her grand entrance in a luxury car and her dramatic rescue had been pretty cool. The look on Samantha and her friends' faces had been priceless. Ava just shrugged, her expression as cool as ever. "It was nothing. Desk mates should help each other out. You helped me with my homework yesterday, so I was just returning the favor. Don't get the wrong idea." He wasn't getting the wrong idea, but he did glance down at his left hand, which was still firmly clasped in hers. "Can you let go now?" "Oh." With a perfectly straight face, she released his hand. "Sorry, I forgot." Ryan let out a sigh of relief. He said goodbye to her and quickly wheeled his bike toward the parking garage. He was really going to be late now. Watching him hurry away, Ava's cool facade melted away. She looked down at her own hand and pouted. "Silly Ryan, why are you in such a hurry to let go? Is my hand not nice to hold?" But then a smile spread across her face. "Oh well, I gotta hold his hand first thing in the morning. That's an unexpected bonus. I should thank that Samantha girl for causing a scene. She gave me the perfect excuse." She turned and looked back toward the school gate, a mischievous glint in her eyes. She gave a little wave. "Thanks a bunch." At the school gate, Samantha suddenly shivered, a strange feeling washing over her, as if she had just been outsmarted by a cunning fox. Meanwhile, Ava was humming a little tune as she walked toward her classroom, her hands clasped behind her back. After parking his bike in the underground garage, Ryan sprinted through the school building, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He reached the back door of his classroom just as the morning bell was about to ring. He almost collided with his friend Leo, who was just coming out of the classroom to go to the bathroom. Leo's eyes lit up when he saw him. He pulled him aside and whispered excitedly, "Dude, you're not going to believe this. Big news. Just now, at the school gate, Queen Ava got out of her family's Maybach and walked into school holding hands with some guy. My friend in the other class saw it and just texted me. The rumor is already spreading like wildfire." As he shared the gossip, he sneakily watched Ryan's reaction, a hint of smugness in his eyes. As his best friend, he had been a little jealous of all the intimate moments Ryan had had with Ava yesterday. But now, it seemed, she was holding hands with another guy in public. Compared to that, Ryan's little interactions with her didn't seem like such a big deal. The thought made him feel a little better. Sometimes, being a best friend was a complicated mix of wanting your friend to succeed and not wanting them to succeed too much. Ryan, however, was in a hurry to get to his seat before Mr. Harris saw him. He didn't have time for Leo's gossip. "Oh, I know," he said dismissively. "That guy was me." And with that, he brushed past his stunned friend and disappeared into the classroom. Leo was left standing there, his mind reeling. What did he just say? When he finally processed it, his world came crashing down. Holy crap, it was him again. While Leo was having a mental breakdown, Ryan had finally made it back to his seat in the back row, next to his desk mate. He quickly put down his backpack and took out his textbook, breathing a sigh of relief. Bring. The morning bell rang, and Mr. Harris walked in, his face as grim as ever. The first period of the day was literature. The students quickly took out their textbooks and began to read aloud in unison. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The sound of their voices filled the room. Mr. Harris looked pleased. He nodded, walked around the room to make sure everyone was reading, and then left through the back door. The moment he was gone, the reading devolved into a disorganized mumble. Many students pulled out their breakfast, soy milk, donuts, bagels, and breakfast burritos, and began to eat. They had all been in a hurry to get to school on time and hadn't had a chance to eat at home. The classroom was filled with the smell of various breakfast foods. In the back row, Ryan's stomach growled. He watched his classmates eat, his mouth watering. He had been in such a rush this morning. He had forgotten to grab breakfast. He would have to wait until the long break after the second period to go to the campus store. Just as he was thinking this, a slender, pale hand holding a breakfast burrito and a cup of soy milk appeared in front of him. He looked up surprised. His desk mate was looking at him, her expression as cool as ever. "I bought too much for breakfast," she said, her voice calm and detached. "You can have this. I don't want to waste it." Listening to his desk mate's cool, composed explanation, Ryan looked from the breakfast in front of him to her face, a suspicious glint in his eyes. Bought too much. How does someone accidentally buy exactly enough for 2 people? And I've never known her to eat 2 breakfast burritos and drink 2 cups of soy milk for breakfast. His gaze fell back to the food on his desk. The soy milk was still hot. The burrito was stuffed with sausage, eggs, cheese, and potatoes, and smothered in a thick, savory sauce. It looked delicious. His stomach growled again. He swallowed hard. "Well, thanks," he said. His desk mate, still as cool as ever, had already turned back to her literature book. "You're welcome. It's what desk mates do." Ryan eagerly unwrapped the burrito and started eating. He was so focused on his food, he didn't see the faint smile that touched his desk mate's lips as she hid behind her book. The tiny Ava inside was beaming. First time feeding my little desk mate. Success. In the back row of the classroom, the boy was happily eating his breakfast, and the girl beside him was pretending to read, sneaking glances at him out of the corner of her eye, a smile playing on her lips. The morning sun streamed through the window, bathing the scene in a warm, gentle light. It was a peaceful, harmonious moment. But elsewhere in the classroom, a pair of eyes filled with cold jealousy was watching them. The first class on Wednesday morning was English. As the morning reading period was coming to an end, the group leaders began to collect the previous day's English homework. Trevor Wallace, the English class representative, stood at the front of the room, then slowly made his way down the aisle. When all the homework had been collected and handed to him, he casually flipped through the stack of papers. He seemed to be looking for something. He found it, glanced at the contents, and a cold, triumphant glint appeared in his eyes. He then looked up, his gaze sweeping over the classroom until it landed on the back row. He walked straight toward Ryan and Ava. When he reached their desks, the group leader from their row was just about to return his seat. He paused, surprised to see Trevor. "What's up? Is our group's homework all there?" Trevor nodded dismissively. "Yeah, it's all here. This doesn't concern you. Go back to your seat." His tone was arrogant, like a boss talking to an underling. The group leader, confused, walked away, leaving Trevor standing in front of Ryan and Ava. Ava looked up, her expression cool. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tinged with annoyance. She remembered him from yesterday. Trevor gave her a smile he thought was charming. "Don't worry, Miss Sinclair. This has nothing to do with you. Your homework is fine." Then his gaze shifted to Ryan, and his smile turned into a sneer. "But your desk mate here, he has a big problem." His voice was a little too loud, drawing the attention of the other students. Seeing him, a cold look appeared in Ava's eyes. She was starting to get angry. Even without her past life's experience as a CEO, she could see right through his malicious intentions. Before she could say anything, Ryan spoke up, a puzzled look on his face. "Me? What problem?" He was also annoyed. He had stayed up late last night studying, and he had done his homework diligently. He was sure his English worksheet was perfect, even his handwriting was neat. What could possibly be wrong with it? Trevor seemed to have been waiting for him to ask. He sneered and pulled out Ryan's worksheet. In front of the whole class, he slammed it down on Ryan's desk. "Your worksheet," he declared, "is copied." Slap. The sound of the paper hitting the desk, combined with Trevor's sharp accusation, echoed through the quiet classroom. More students turned to look, their faces a mix of surprise and curiosity. Copied homework? Ryan? He was a slacker, sure, but he was also quiet and seemed honest. It didn't seem like something he would do. Ryan looked at the worksheet on his desk, then at Trevor, who was looking at him with a triumphant smirk. "Copied? Do you have any proof?" Trevor looked at him with a pitying expression, as if he had already caught him in the act. "Don't even try to deny it, Ryan. As a class representative, I get the answer key in advance. I've seen your worksheet. From the multiple choice to the fill-in-the-blanks and the reading comprehension, it's all perfect. You got a perfect score on the objective questions." This worksheet was from the final mock exam of a neighboring high school. It was difficult. Even the top students there made at least 3 or 4 mistakes. "And you got a perfect score? Who do you think you are?" He paused, a victorious smile spreading across his face. "So, there's only one explanation. You copied your worksheet from Miss Sinclair." The other students in the class seemed to agree. That made sense. They had also done the homework yesterday, and it was hard. It was impossible for a normal person to get a perfect score. Only a top student like Ava could have done it. For a slacker like Ryan to get a perfect score, copying from Ava was the only logical explanation. Slap. Ava slammed her textbook down on her desk. Her face was as cold as ice. She looked at Trevor. "Who told you that Ryan copied my homework?" Having witnessed Ryan's academic prowess firsthand the previous night, where he had effortlessly conquered exam papers and even aced competition-level questions, Ava knew better than anyone what her desk mate was truly capable of. Now, hearing Trevor's baseless accusations, a genuine anger began to bubble within her. However, seeing Ava leap to Ryan's defense only fueled Trevor's jealousy. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, though he managed a dismissive smile. Miss Sinclair, you don't have to cover for him. I know you two are desk mates, and that you promised the teacher you'd tutor him. But homework is homework, and rules are rules. For a slacker like him to suddenly ace such a difficult English paper overnight, well, that's not something a little tutoring can achieve. His words seemed plausible, and the other students in the class nodded in agreement. Feeling the support of his classmates, Trevor stood up even straighter, his expression one of righteous indignation. As the English class representative, I have a responsibility to our teacher and to this entire class. Everyone else worked hard on their homework, while he just copied his way to a perfect score. That's not fair to anyone. He was on a roll now, his confidence soaring. He looked at Ryan, his tone condescending. Ryan, tell me, am I wrong? Everyone is watching. I'm the class representative. What reason would I have to target you specifically? He was sure he had him trapped. This public humiliation would be the end of him. He would be a laughingstock. But Ryan, the target of his attack, seemed completely unfazed. There was no anger or shame on his face. In fact, he seemed to be genuinely considering Trevor's question. Then he looked up at him, a look of sudden realization on his face. I heard you have a crush on Ava, but she rejected you. Is that why you're jealous that I'm her desk mate and you're targeting me? He asked, his voice calm and direct. His words were so blunt, so devoid of any subtlety, that they were like a bomb dropping in the middle of the classroom. The entire room fell silent. The air froze. What did he just say? The triumphant smirk on Trevor's face disappeared. The students in the class stared their mouths agape. A moment later, a wave of gasps and whispers swept through the room. Trevor's face turned bright red. What are you talking about? He stammered. Ryan, his expression still one of innocent curiosity, repeated, I said, you have a crush on. Trevor was so horrified he almost lunged at him to cover his mouth. Shut up. I didn't. You're lying. He was about to lose it. How could Ryan not play by the rules? One moment, he was the cunning villain, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. The next, Ryan had just ripped away his mask in front of everyone. Yes, he had a crush on Ava. And yes, he was jealous of Ryan. But you couldn't just say that out loud. High school romance was supposed to be a gray area, a world of subtle glances and unspoken words. You couldn't just drag it out into the open like this. It was social suicide. Instantly, the atmosphere in the classroom shifted. No one cared about whether Ryan had copied his homework anymore. All eyes were on Trevor, their gazes filled with a mix of amusement and intrigue. So that's what this is about. Trevor has a crush on Queen Ava, and he got rejected. This is some juicy gossip. Seeing the English class representative flustered and panicking, Ryan, the supposed cause of all this, just shook his head. High school boys and their petty jealousies. For a man with the soul of 30-something, it was all so transparent and so easy to dismantle. Just expose their little secrets, and they would fall apart. He looked at the flustered Trevor and sighed. See, it's just a crush. Getting this worked up over it. How is he ever going to get a girlfriend? Suddenly, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor broke the silence. Ryan turned to see his desk, mate standing up. She looked at the class, her expression cool and composed. I'd like to clarify something. Did I go too far? Did I upset her by bringing her into this? Ryan wondered. Trevor, on the other hand, was ecstatic. He was on the verge of tears. Yes, Miss Sinclair, please, clean my name. You are a true goddess. I was right to have a crush on you. But then, Ava spoke, her voice as cool and clear as ever. Ryan said there was a rumor that Trevor has a crush on me and that I rejected him. I'd like to clarify. That's not a rumor. The classroom was silent for a moment. Then it exploded. Way on. Amid the uproar, Trevor's vision went black, and he almost fainted. Ava, however, had already sat back down, her expression as cool as ever. She casually turned her head, and her eyes met Ryan's. He could have sworn he saw her raise an eyebrow, a flicker of a smile in her cool gaze. It was a classic move. The power couple taking down the villain. Just then the bell rang, and the English teacher, a man in his early 40s, walked in. Seeing the commotion, he asked, "What's all the excitement about?" Trevor, seeing him, was overjoyed. He had found his savior. "Sir," he yelled, "I have a complaint." The English teacher for Homeroom 10 was a man in his early 40s named Mr. Sterling. The students secretly called him Sterling, partly because he was a bit flamboyant and had a tendency to talk with his hands. But he was an excellent teacher. He had studied in Europe for several years and had a flawless British accent that made listening to him read from the textbook a surprisingly pleasant experience. At that moment, Mr. Sterling's arrival was a lifeline for Trevor. He was so relieved he was on the verge of tears. Sir, Ryan's English worksheet is perfect on the objective section. There's no way he could have done that on his own. He must have copied from Avis Sinclair. I called him out on it, and he's denying it. In his anger, he had dropped the respectful Miss Sinclair and was now using her full name. Mr. Sterling looked confused. He glanced at Ryan and Ava. What's going on? Ryan stood up, a look of righteous indignation on his face. He pointed at Trevor. Oh, he has a crush on Ava and got rejected. Trevor was about to lose his mind. I didn't. What are you talking about? The teacher didn't ask you that. If murder weren't illegal, he would have strangled him right then and there. Beside him, Ava looked at the teacher, her expression cool and composed. Sir, that's not what happened. He's the one who's lying. Ryan did his own homework. He didn't copy anyone. I can vouch for him. Trevor scoffed. He copied your homework. Your testimony is worthless. Do you think the teacher will believe? He was cut off by Mr. Sterling, who clapped his hands together, a look of sudden understanding on his face. Oh, I see. Well, if Miss Sinclair says so, then it must be true. He beamed, his hands fluttering with excitement. He looked at Ryan with admiration. Yesterday's worksheet was quite difficult. To get a perfect score on the objective section, it seems we have another rising star in our class. Ryan, isn't it? You made a lot of progress. Keep up the good work. Ryan looked humble. Thank you, sir. I'll do my best. The exchange left Trevor stunned. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Sir, I'm your class representative. Aren't you supposed to be on my side? Why do you just believe whatever she says? The crisis was averted. Mr. Sterling, pleased with his efficient problem-solving, held up his textbook. All right, let's begin. Everyone, take out your textbooks. Today, we're moving on to the next unit. A rustling of pages filled the room. Only Trevor remained standing in the aisle, unable to accept what had just happened. As Ryan sat down, he glanced at the class representative and offered a piece of friendly advice. You should probably go back to your seat before Batman comes to get you for being a clown. Trevor. Mr. Sterling had his own teaching method. In addition to reviewing vocabulary and grammar, he always ended the lesson by playing a recording of the textbook passage and having the students read along. It's not enough to just know how to write. You have to know how to speak. I know we're preparing for exams, but I want you to remember that English is a practical skill. It can't just stay on the page. After they had read along once, he scanned the classroom, his hands gesturing gracefully. Now, I'd like to have a student stand up and read for us. At his words, most of the students immediately looked down, trying to make themselves invisible. Mr. Sterling was not pleased. He pointed to the front of the room. Class representative, you can start. Trevor stood up, a confident smile on his face. As the class representative, his spoken English was one of the best in the class, and he had prepared for this moment. In front of the whole class, he began to read from his textbook. He read smoothly and fluently, his accent a deliberate imitation of a British one. It was a little over the top, but it was still much better than most of the other students. When he finished, he sat down, a look of smug satisfaction on his face. Mr. Sterling nodded in approval. Not bad. He scanned the classroom again. Next, anyone else want to give it a try? The room was silent. No one wanted to go after the class representative and risk looking foolish. Just then, a voice called out, Sir, I suggest we have Ryan read. The students turned to see that it was Trevor who had spoken. He was looking at Ryan, a malicious glint in his eyes. Since he can so easily complete such a difficult English worksheet, I'm sure reading a simple passage from the textbook will be no problem for him. Mr. Sterling thought that was a great idea. All right, Ryan, you're up. All eyes were on Ryan as he stood up. Trevor, savoring the moment, added another venomous comment. And you can't just read it, Ryan. If you can get a perfect score on the objective section of such a difficult worksheet, your spoken English must be at a pretty high level, right? I'm expecting a standard British accent. Ryan looked at him and said patiently, It doesn't matter if it's a British or American accent, as long as it's fluent and understandable. As if I need a lecture from you, you loser. Trevor sneered. Stop making excuses. I bet you can't even read a complete sentence. Ha ha. He burst out laughing. Ryan just smiled. Then he picked up his textbook and began to read, his voice calm and steady. At the first few words, Mr. Sterling's eyes lit up with excitement. When he finished the first sentence, Ava turned to look at him, her cool composure gone, her mouth slightly agape. And when he had finished reading the entire passage, his voice flowing with a pure, authentic British accent, so fluent and natural it was breathtaking, Trevor's laughter had long since died. And the entire classroom erupted in a storm of applause. 4 years of listening to English radio broadcasts in the park every morning in college. 3 years of honing his speaking skills as a tutor, even becoming best friends and roommates with a British colleague. It was true that the accent didn't matter as long as you were fluent, but that didn't stop him from mastering it anyway. So, while his advice to Trevor had been sincere, it didn't stop him from showing off a little. When he finished reading, the classroom exploded. The students were stunned. They stared at him as if he were some kind of god. They weren't experts, but they knew what they were hearing was on another level. His accent was so good, it was almost better than Mr. Sterling's. Trevor was speechless. His mind was a blank. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. How is that possible? How can he? At the front of the room, Mr. Sterling was ecstatic. He looked at Ryan as if he had just discovered a hidden treasure. Your accent. Have you been practicing? No, this is beyond practice. Did you study in London as a child? That accent is so authentic. You sound like a native. He was so excited, his hands were fluttering like butterflies. Ryan, have you ever considered entering a speaking competition? There's a state-level one at the end of the month. Our school has 2 spots. I can get you one. With your skills, you could definitely win a grand prize. And it could even get you extra points on your college applications. Ryan just looked humble. You're too kind, sir. I just taught myself. I'm still not as good as our class representative. The excessive humility was more cutting than any insult. Trevor's face turned bright red. It was as if he had been slapped. When Ryan sat back down, the classroom was still buzzing with excitement. Many students were sneaking glances at him, their eyes filled with a new sense of awe and admiration. This quiet, shy slacker had been hiding this incredible talent all along. As his desk mate, Ava was trying to regain her composure, but she couldn't stop herself from stealing glances at him. She was just as surprised as everyone else. My little desk mate has this kind of skill. I've read all his diaries, and I don't remember him ever mentioning this. Though she couldn't figure it out, she was happy. This was a good thing. His talent only proved that her instincts about him were right. He was a treasure trove of hidden surprises. Who knew what other secrets he was hiding? The thought made the tiny Ava inside smile. But her smile quickly faded. After English class, a crowd of students, including several girls, gathered around Ryan's desk, eagerly asking him for tips on how to improve their spoken English. The girls were especially enthusiastic, their eyes shining with admiration. This would not do. Ava's face hardened. She stood up, her voice cool and authoritative. All right, that's enough. If you want to practice your speaking, go talk to the teacher or listen to the recordings. Ryan has his own studying to do. Her commanding tone worked. The girls reluctantly dispersed. Ava turned to Ryan, her expression as cool as ever. Don't get the wrong idea. The mock exams are next week. I just don't want them to distract you from your review. The clueless Ryan just nodded. Oh, thanks. You're welcome. Ava turned away, but not before shooting a glare at the retreating girls. The tiny Ava inside had her arms crossed, a pout on her face. My desk made his mind. No one else is allowed to have him. After the second period, it was time for the morning exercises. The upbeat music blasted from the school speakers, filling the campus with energy. On the field, students from all 3 grades lined up in their respective classes. The bright May sun shone down on them, a picture of youthful vitality. The National High School morning exercise routine. Youth in motion. The music started, and the exercises began. The students moved in unison, their arms and legs stretching, their bodies swaying to the rhythm. In the homeroom 10 section, Ryan and Ava, both being tall, were in the back row. Ava followed the music with a graceful precision, her movements elegant and fluid. The sun on her face made her look breathtakingly beautiful, and her long legs, even in the baggy uniform pants, were a sight to behold. Boys from the neighboring classes were staring at her, mesmerized. Even Ryan couldn't help but steal a few glances. She really was in a league of her own. Just then, her cool gaze swept over the crowd. The boys who had been staring quickly looked away. Her eyes met Ryan's, catching him in the act. He quickly looked away, a little embarrassed. Ava's expression didn't change. She turned her attention back to the front and continued with the exercises. But a triumphant smile played on her lips. You silly boy, you can't resist me. The second period was followed by a 20-minute-long break. So after the morning exercises, there was still some free time. The students on the field scattered, many of them rushing toward the campus store. As a man with the soul of a 30-something, Ryan had no interest in joining the chaotic crowd. His friend Leo came over to him. Hey man, let's go back to the classroom. Only an idiot would try to squeeze into that mob at the store. Ryan agreed and was about to head back with him when a cool, melodic voice called out his name. Ryan. He turned to see his desk, mate walking toward him. "What's up?" he asked. She pointed toward the campus store. "Come with me to the store," she said, her tone so casual it was as if she were stating a fact. At her words, Leo immediately and discreetly backed away. He had learned his lesson yesterday. He did not want to get on Queen Ava's bad side again. The memory of her icy glare was enough to make him want to run for the hills. With his friend gone, Ryan was left confused. "Why do you need me to go with you? You want to go to the store, but I don't," the top-tier straight man from his past life thought. His desk mate's expression didn't change. She pointed to the massive crowd of students heading toward the store. "There are too many people. I can't get through." Ryan laughed. "You can't get through, and you think adding me to the mix will help?" Before he could finish, she held out her hand to him, her voice cool and composed. "That's why. You're going to hold my hand." Holding hands, with one person leading the way and the other following behind, was actually a pretty effective way to get through a crowd. It was a good idea, but Ryan hesitated, a wary look in his eyes. "Hold your hand? I don't know if that's a good idea." Holding hands with her in public, in front of so many people, he had a feeling it would not end well for him. And why was she always finding excuses to hold his hand lately? Was it just his imagination? His desk mate, however, seemed completely unfazed. "There's nothing wrong with it. We're desk mates. It's perfectly reasonable for a desk mate to help another desk mate by holding their hand." She extended her hand a little further, as if urging him to take it. Ryan looked at her. She seemed so open and honest, not a hint of ulterior motive in her expression. He thought about it. It was just holding hands to get through a crowd. Even she was so casual about it, so he shouldn't overthink it. It's perfectly reasonable. So he stopped hesitating and took her hand. The cool, soft touch of her skin against his sent a jolt through him, even with his mature, 30-something soul. He quickly pushed the thought away. "Don't be ridiculous. It's just a normal desk, made hand-holding. It's completely innocent." And with that, he led her into the crowd. Meanwhile, following behind him, her hand held tightly in his, feeling the warmth of his palm, the tiny Ava inside was beaming. She looked at his back as he forged a path through the crowd, and she couldn't stop smiling. "I gotta hold his hand again. You're a genius, Ava." By the time they had fought their way through the crowd and reached the campus store, Ryan was sweating. It had been brutal. Even with his 18-year-old body, he had almost been overwhelmed by the sheer force of the human tide. Being the desk mate of the school queen was not a job for the faint of heart. In contrast, Ava was completely composed and even seemed to be in a good mood. She walked into the store, her hands clasped behind her back, and began to browse the shelves. She quickly picked out a bag of barbecue chips and 2 bottles of ice-cold Sprite. She paid at the counter and then walked over to Ryan, handing him one of the bottles. "This is for you," she said coolly. "Your payment." Ryan took it without hesitation. He had just endured a near-death experience. A bottle of Sprite was the least she could do. He didn't even consider the fact that any other boy would have been green with envy at the chance to hold her hand, let alone get paid for it. In fact, he was a little disappointed. He looked at the bag of chips in her hand. "Why didn't you buy 2 bags of chips? More payment was always better." Ava raised an eyebrow. "If you want some, we can share them back in the classroom," she said, her voice light and airy. Sharing a bag of chips. Reaching into the bag at the same time. The inevitable, heart-pounding brush of fingers. From 100 clever ways to get closer to your deskmate by a cunning ice queen. They drank their Sprites and walked out of the store. They were about to head back to the classroom when a voice called out, "Ava." They turned to see a tall, handsome boy with a sunny smile walking toward them, a group of his friends in tow. The boy walked straight up to them, completely ignoring Ryan. He smiled at Ava, his tone familiar. "You're here buying snacks, too? I was just about to go find you in your classroom. Are you free for lunch?" "My treat." Before Ava could answer, another voice cut in. "Sorry." A figure stepped forward, positioning himself directly in front of Ava, blocking the handsome boy's view. Ryan looked at him and smiled. "She's not free." The tall, handsome boy who had asked Ava to lunch was Blake Anderson from Homeroom 13. He was a big deal at Northwood High. At 6'2", he was the star of the school basketball team. He was also in a humanities track, and his grades were just as impressive as his athletic skills. He consistently ranked in the top 5, and sometimes even the top 3 in his grade. He was the quintessential scholar athlete. He was popular with everyone, from the underclassmen to the seniors. But what really made him famous was a rumor that had circulated right before graduation. He had apparently been involved with a girl in his grade, a relationship that had become intimate. But after he got what he wanted, he had callously dumped her. When she had confronted him, hoping to make things official, he had coldly dismissed her. "We were just having fun. Why are you being so serious?" The girl, heartbroken and humiliated by the rumors, had jumped from the roof of the school administration building. The incident had caused a huge scandal in their town, and several school administrators had lost their jobs. But Blake, the one responsible, had somehow managed to walk away unscathed. In short, he was not a good person. The moment Ryan saw him, all these memories came flooding back. In his past life, he had heard that Blake had pursued Ava, but she had never given him the time of day. So he wasn't too worried, but he couldn't be too careful. A guy like that was toxic. Even a hint of him near Ava was too much. And since his rebirth, Ava's behavior had been different. It was possible her attitude toward Blake had changed as well. As her desk mate, Ryan felt it was his duty to protect her from this potential danger. So when Blake, with his familiar, overly confident tone, invited her to lunch, Ryan stepped in. He positioned himself in front of her and smiled at Blake. Sorry, she's not free. Ava had also recognized Blake immediately. And, as a reborn person, she also remembered his dark past. Beneath his handsome exterior was a rotten core. A cold look appeared in her eyes. In her past life, though she had rejected his advances, she had at first been a little impressed by him. But now, knowing the truth, she was not going to give him the time of day. But before she could say anything, a figure stepped in front of her. Her anger at Blake dissipated, replaced by a sense of surprise. She looked at Ryan's back, a puzzled expression on her face. The tiny Ava inside was just as confused. What's going on with him? Did he have a personality transplant? He was so clueless before, and now he's stepping up to defend me? Blake and his friends were also taken aback. They looked at the boy who had just appeared out of nowhere. They had never seen him before. Blake didn't even bother to address him. He looked past Ryan to Ava and smiled charmingly. Ava, who is this? Ryan shifted his position, continuing to block Blake's view. He met his gaze and smiled. My name is Ryan Miller. I'm Ava's. He paused as if thinking. Then he grinned. Her protector. His words hung in the air. The space in front of the campus store fell silent. Even Ava, who was standing behind him, was so surprised her mouth fell open. A faint blush crept up her cheeks. When the onlookers finally processed what he had said, Blake's friends burst out laughing. Ha, what did he just say? Her protector? Dude, have you been reading too many fantasy novels? That's so lame, and you think you're worthy of protecting her. A mocking sneer appeared on Blake's face. Dude, if you want to be a protector, you need to have some skills. And have you even asked her if she wants you to be her protector? He looked past Ryan to Ava again, his smile still in place. Ava, is this guy bothering you? Do you want me to get rid of him for you? His tone was casual, as if he were in complete control. For most girls, his combination of good looks and confidence would have been irresistible. Blake was confident in his appeal, but he was met with a cold, firm rejection. That won't be necessary. In front of everyone, Ava stepped out from behind Ryan. She ignored the handsome scholar-athlete and turned to her desk mate, a radiant smile on her face. He is my protector. Her smile was like the sun breaking through the clouds, a dazzling sight that left everyone speechless. The air in front of the campus store was thick with a stunned silence. Protector? When Ryan had first said it, everyone had thought it was a joke. But now, hearing it from the lips of the undisputed Ice Queen of Northwood High, no one was laughing. Blake's face was a mask of disbelief. This nobody. How could he? Just then, one of Blake's friends seemed to recognize Ryan. I know him, he exclaimed. That's Ryan Miller, the slacker from Homeroom 10, the one who's obsessed with Samantha Banks from Homeroom 7. His words jogged the memories of the other students. Oh yeah, I know him. Samantha Banks' simp. He's always at the store buying her snacks. He's just an errand boy. Hearing his friends, Blake's confusion turned to contempt. He looked at Ryan and sneered. So that's who you are? A slacker who's a simp for another girl. And you think you're worthy of being Ava's protector? His words seemed to resonate with the onlookers. A slacker who was a simp versus a handsome scholar-athlete. It was clear who was more worthy of being Queen Ava's protector. But before Ryan could say anything, Ava stepped forward again, positioning herself in front of him. She met Blake's gaze, her voice as cold as ice. Whether he's worthy or not is for me to decide, not you. And as for him being someone else's errand boy, that's just a rumor. And as for his grades, she thought of how he had aced all his tests the previous night and his stunning performance in English class that morning. A small smile played on her lips. I think he's a lot more capable than you are, Blake. Blake, who had been pampered his whole life and was used to being admired, had never been so publicly humiliated. And to be compared to, and apparently lose to, a nobody. Hearing Ava's words, and seeing the rare smile she had given only to Ryan, he was consumed by a jealous rage. He tried to maintain his composure, but his voice was laced with a cold anger when he spoke to Ryan. Is that so? I didn't realize you were such a hidden talent, Miller. I'm curious, what was your rank on the last mock exam? Before Ryan could answer, one of Blake's friends chimed in. I know, Blake. I saw the homeroom 10 grade sheet in the teacher's office. There are over 300 students in the humanities track, and this guy ranked 280th. He's at the bottom. Blake laughed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. With a score like that, you still have the nerve to say you're not a slacker? Ryan just shrugged. I didn't do well last time. That doesn't mean I'll never do well. His words only sounded like a weak excuse to Blake. He sneered, looking down at him. All right, let's make a bet. The next mock exam is next week. If you can get into the top 10 in our grade, I'll admit you're capable, and I'll leave Ava alone. How about it? Ryan looked at him and said patiently, girls aren't prizes to be won or lost. Do you think it's okay to objectify women like that? Does her mother know you talk like this? Blake. Standing beside Ryan, Ava had to suppress a laugh. Blake, however, was furious. His gentlemanly facade disappeared. Cut the crap. Are you in or not? If you get into the top 10, you don't even have to beat my rank. I'll give up on Ava, but if you lose... He paused, his gaze fixed on Ryan, his voice turning menacing. You'll have to streak across the football field, in front of everyone, 3 laps. Streaking again. The first thing Ryan thought of was his friend. This guy and Leo would get along great. The onlookers were buzzing with excitement. Blake's friends were jeering at Ryan. What's it going to be, dude? Are you in, or are you a coward? If you're scared, just say so, and stay away from Queen Ava from now on. High school boys and their petty rivalries. So childish, the 30-something-year-old in him thought with a sigh. Then Ryan nodded. All right, it's a deal. It's not that I'm interested in the bet. I just really enjoy watching people streak. As they were walking back to the classroom, Ava, her hands clasped behind her back, looked at Ryan. Protector? What was that all about? She asked, her voice still cool, but with a hint of curiosity. He couldn't tell her the real reason. He just shrugged and said, I just said it. I didn't like the look of that guy. Ava nodded, a simple oh, as if she accepted his explanation. But the tiny Ava inside was smiling. Oh, you stubborn boy. You were just jealous, weren't you? And you won't even admit it. Boys are so cute when they're trying to be tough.